Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo Sam Monson live on YouTube today. Getting all negative.
Yeah.
Reasons for pessimism. All brought to you by FanDuel. Reasons for pessimism for all 32 NFL teams. Your time to shine, my friend.
Yeah, we try to invent the fiction that your team's going to win the Super Bowl. But the reality is 31 of you won't, which means, most of you suck.
We're going to tear you all down here today. It's all coming at you from the Antonio Cromartie studio, in part with Huggies. We are pre-recording this on a Wednesday. I'm on the road here all day in the minivan with all the kids, driving back to Massachusetts for a wedding this weekend.
Maniac.
Wedding time. So we're pre-recording this on a Wednesday. If you missed it, if you're like, man, I want to feel good about my team. It's May. That was Monday's show.
Yeah.
Monday's show, we went through every team, gave you a reason for optimism, maybe even a reason you'll win the Super Bowl.
It's too much hope in the offseason, It's like we finish the Super Bowl, and then there's just months and months and months of hope.
And then historically.
And then reality sets in.
Yeah. We say this every year, too. Historically, this show does better than the optimism show.
Yeah. See, I think it's setting this false sense of hope, right? We got months of. This is why when you look at the analytics during the season, it's why it's peaks week 1 and 2 when everyone's still got hope, and then crushing reality of the fact that your team probably stinks again sets in, and everyone kind of gets disinterested by the NFL season, and by mid-December, there's only 17 people left watching, right?
Yeah, that's it.
If we set a more realistic baseline in the offseason, right? And we were like, look,
don't give them too much hope.
Some of these moves are good, some of them are bad, and your team maybe didn't move forward, right? That would have a more grounding effect. So then when we got to week 8 and your team was 500, you'd still be into it. Because you're like, look, I expected this. I knew this was the reality coming into the season. I didn't have unrealistically high expectations, so we're all good.
It's good life advice. Just lower expectations across the board. You'll never be disappointed.
Yeah.
So that's what this show is for. We're going to go team by team. We're going to go reverse order from our Monday show, trying to mix it up here. And we're starting with NFC teams instead of AFC teams. So it's all going to start in the NFC East with the Dallas Cowboys. If you want optimism and hope for the Cowboys, that was on Monday. But today, we tear you down reasons for pessimism for the Dallas Cowboys this offseason here.
Well, when was the last time they won a championship?
Wow.
Start with that.
1995, to be exact.
Also,
how old were you? 13? We were 13 back then.
Also, you start all the, as good as this defensive line looks now, and all the additions, they may have basically just recreated Micah Parsons in the aggregate at this point. If you just signed Micah Parsons, you might be every bit as good as you were right now, but without having to make 7 moves. Just making the one move, giving the guy the money that he wanted, you'd be in the same spot. So a lot of moves have been made to maybe end up basically in the same place as you were before. It's a decent roster, but nothing about it screams championship, baby.
Yeah, they're probably in a better spot than they were last year, but part of that is because I think when they traded for George Pickens, we didn't know how good he was going to be. Yeah. He was awesome last year, but you still don't have the long-term deal there, so you might have an upset George Pickens. So part of this show is not just...
But he has signed his franchise tender.
Right.
Which, that happened sort of in and around draft time. People were like, oh, maybe this is the... maybe he's okay with it.
So you got, Pickens, maybe he's unhappy, just playing on the tag. Javonte Williams at running back looked like a really nice signing last year, but now you've thrown $8 million his way, so he goes from this really nice undervalued $3 million signing to now he's making $8 million. It doesn't do much in the pass game. And you're right, the pass rush, we mentioned it as part of the optimism show. The D-line's getting in better shape, but it's still a bit of a question mark. Developmental first-rounder in Malachi Lawrence, who's a late bloomer, and you don't necessarily have that impact player up
there's a lot more depth there now. Yeah, there's a lot more depth there now, but genuinely, it might be no better than the defensive line was when it was Micah Parsons and friends, right? Micah Parsons and anybody. Remember when who was the best defensive tackle duo in the NFL? And the answer was Aaron Donald and literally any warm body you put next to him, right? He's that good. Micah Parsons is in a similar kind of category where he makes the defensive line average by himself. It doesn't even matter who the other guys are in the rotation. They have a way deeper rotation than they had with Micah Parsons, but Quinnen Williams is now the best player on that defensive line by a distance, and I don't think he's as good as Micah Parsons was.
Did they really upgrade it? So part of these shows, we could just be a little facetious and be everything that people have criticized, we could just bring that out. Caleb Downs didn't work out. He's too slow. He's not athletic, and you drafted him.
I will not
11.
lower myself to
We're not going to do
criticism
that.
of Caleb Downs.
We're not going to do that. A fair question, though, did they upgrade linebacker enough? You trade a fifth-rounder for D. Winters to come in. You have DeMarvion Overshown, coming back again. But
I think you can just
have
look.
You done enough
at
linebacker?
Look at the back seven and just say, all right, Caleb Downs, I still believe will be a star, but even if we just say he's a rookie, it might not happen immediately. The back seven doesn't look great. Like Deron Bland was hit or miss last season. He I think is a bit of a question mark in terms of where his best position is and how you best deploy him. Kobe Durant, Siobhan Ravel. This is a questionable group of cornerbacks, plus Malik Hooker is probably one of your safeties. He's getting on, hasn't played his best football. You kind of need Caleb Downs to be an impact playmaker, otherwise the secondary is in trouble. And then, as you said, the linebacker group with D. Winters coming in, Overshown coming off injury, it's unproven, right? It's not elite.
So I think that's fair. Reasons for concern. We don't know if the defense, it looks like it should be better on paper, but is it? Is a fair question. Whatever, year two concerns with George Pickens being in the building and, keeping his head on straight, maybe wide receiver 3, even though I know you love Flournoy.
Your most important offensive lineman is still the worst.
Tyler Guyton. Yeah. And Terrence Steele. I mean, both tackles. Terrence Steele hasn't played his best football in a couple of years, and Tyler Guyton, I don't think, has been that good.
Right.
In his 2 years in the NFL. Those are all reasons for concern for the Dallas Cowboys.
Plus whatever Hex got put on the team the last time they won the championship.
Plus that. All right, we're going through the NFC East here. Let's go New York Giants. Reasons for concern for the New York Giants. I mean, is it Jackson Dart's health and playing style?
It's definitely got to be one of them. Like Jackson Dart, I think, looked very good last season. Surprisingly so. Like, I didn't think he was that good or would be that good coming into the NFL. A little bit like Daniel Jones, it seems to constantly surprise people, including me, how effective a runner he is. Like, there's nothing seemingly special about his athleticism, et cetera, and yet he is a real threat running the ball. And that was a big part of his game last season. But he had so many injuries/concussions, and he plays with this, like, kamikaze style. Again, a little bit like Daniel Jones. And it's like at some point you need to protect yourself better. Otherwise, you're simply not going to last as a starting quarterback. Like, I'm not saying you need to go full, Peyton Manning and try and never take a hit. And that's the only way you can survive for 17 games. Like, it's a quandary with these quarterbacks where rushing is a significant part of their game. And there's a fine line between, well, how much do you tap into that versus how much do you protect the guy by not getting him hit? But whatever last year was, it was the wrong side of that line. Like, they need to figure out where that tipping point is, where that balance is, and try and keep him on the field.
So I'd say that's a concern. My other reasons for concern would be, wide receiver 2 didn't necessarily address it. Now, look, we liked Malachi Fields where they got him, and you have Darius Slayton. I like the buy low on Darnell Mooney, but he's coming off, injury and, not really productive last year. So I'd say wide receiver 2 is a question. Defensive tackle is a question, even though I like bringing in DJ Reader as your fallback plan after trading Dexter Lawrence and getting the 10th overall pick. That's all fine, but defensive tackle, you're still not stacking up that group of defensive tackles and putting that, I don't think, anywhere close to the top half of the league. So they're in the bottom half there.
I mean, even just the defense as a whole, right? It was an underachieving group last year, and you traded away the best player from it, and you replaced him with some players who are themselves question marks. Like Arvell Reese is obviously the sort of star addition to the defense in the offseason, and he is potentially a tweener hybrid project, right? And those don't always work out. In fact, sometimes those don't work out spectacularly. So, Arvell Reese,
doesn't have a position,
right?
We don't
know. We don't know where they're going to deploy him, how they're going to deploy him, if he's going to be any good at how they deploy him, and he may be the most important player on that defense. Tremaine Edmonds still remains more, of an athletic freak show than he is top quality linebacker. Abdul Carter, maybe the best player on that defense now. And that's a significant step down from Dexter Lawrence being the best player in that defense.
And the same thing we said on the optimism show is, hey, the secondary, all of those guys have played better football in the past. I mean, you could put that on the pessimism show as well. They've all played better football in the past. Paulson Adebo, Javon Holland, Tyler Nubin, Greg Newsome. They've all played better football at other times. Are they just done? Are they just all regressing at the same time? Can they bounce back, I guess, would be the big question. But it's a reason for concern.
And on offense, you can argue that every single one of their most important players now has a concerning injury history. Jackson Dart, Andrew Thomas, Malik Neighbors, Cam Scadaboo.
That's a good one.
They've all got injury concerns now.
Good pessimism there.
Yeah.
That's good negative you pulled there. Told you, this is it's your show.
It's easy.
Your time to shine. Your time to shine. Giants, probably picking number 1 overall next year.
Nah.
Pessimism show.
Tough scene.
If I'm going to make everybody win the Super Bowl on the other show, we're going to, like the Eagles aren't going to make the playoffs this year.
Why your team will draft number 1 overall.
Yes, that's what we'll do. Reasons for pessimism for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, this is at least more difficult than the other two, because the Eagles are in a better spot overall, you would say.
We're going to talk about Jalen Hurts throwing in the middle of the field 30 more times this offseason.
Right. Well, because they're forcing him into it. And what happens if he just can't?
Can't take a snap under center. Can't throw to the middle of the field. Can't actually get the ball to Mekhi Lemon and Eli Stowers.
I mean, that's probably
he's going to miss A.J. Brown.
Genuinely their biggest concern.
Yeah.
They ship off A.J. Brown. They roll with this group of Buffalo Bills-like receivers who all want to operate in the middle of the field, and Devontae Smith, who operates on the sideline but hasn't really done it at a high level when A.J. Brown hasn't been on the other side of the field. So this new-look offense designed to force Jalen Hurts to be uncomfortable but get the best out of him actually just makes him into a wreck. Right? It took away the only thing he did well, and the only thing he did. It took away the thing that he did best and forced him into the thing he did worse. And that doesn't work. And therefore, the Eagles' offense is worse than it's ever been before with Jalen Hurts, and they're just not a playoff team anymore.
So it's a reason for concern. Jeff Stoutland's out.
Offensive line collapses. Stoutland University's left town.
I mean, I think
everyone forgets everything they've ever learned.
I think that's a reason for concern just overall. It doesn't always happen. But, look, it's not exactly what we talked about with the Lions last year where they lost both coordinators after some continuity for a few years, but the Eagles having more front office personnel, coaching staff turnover. There's a lot of moving parts in Philadelphia right now.
I mean, as a direct comp, we saw it a few years ago with the Patriots when Scarnecchia retired for like a year, and the entire offensive line fell apart almost overnight when Scarnecchia left town.
Mailata starts looking like a rugby player.
To the point where they had to bring him back. Right? Yeah. They dragged him back off the couch and hey, I know you wanted to retire, but no.
They won a Super Bowl. That was 2014, I think.
But the line in the space of 18 months or whatever it was, completely fell apart without Scarnecchia. Now, I don't think that will happen with the Eagles, but automatically you would think, well, that's a longer-term problem than it is acute, right? Maybe that's a reason to be low on Markel Bell more than anybody in the actual starting 5. But, again, there's precedent that actually you take an elite offensive line coach away from an offensive line, and maybe they do start to develop bad habits quicker rather than later, and that day-to-day coaching matters as well, and maybe this group will decline pretty hard.
The only thing look, I think there's broad concern about some coaching and front office turnover. There's the Hurts deal, Sean Mannion, first-time OC, and trying to another new scheme for Jalen Hurts. The losing A.J. Brown, I mean, it's twofold. Whether you think he's lost a step and he's not the same player, or just the fact that he's probably not going to be there. Either way, it's different from what the Eagles have had since 2022, where he's been a top 3 to 5 receiver and a guy that could take over a game. And if he doesn't take over a game, he's drawing all the attention and opening things up. So either way, it's a concern. And they're going to try to replace him in the aggregate with some draft picks, with Dontavian Wicks, and we don't know how that's all going to play out, so that's a concern. And just generally, the run game was awful last year.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley goes from 6 yards per carry to under 4 again, or whatever he was, and they could never get the run game going, so we don't know if that's going to bounce back.
Yeah, the line had already taken a downturn. I mean, that Landon Dickerson looks like he's kind of in trouble physically. I mean, this could genuinely be his last year in the NFL, based off the way some of the discussions are going. That would be a big loss. I mean, he's a really good run-blocking guard in particular. if you're in the downslope of Lane Johnson's career, if Landon Dickerson may end up calling it a career early, suddenly that line starts to get shaky without a Jeff Stoutland to come in and, he'll coach up the next 5, no problem, and, no problem.
Other thing I'll add is some uncertainty at safety with Reed Blankenship out, Sidney Brown out, Andrew Makuba now in year 2. You've got Marcus Epps. You've got a couple draft picks and everything, but some uncertainty there at the safety position for the Eagles.
Yep.
Good? Pessimistic enough?
Yeah.
Great. Rounding out the NFC East with the Washington Commanders, reasons for concern for the Commanders.
Well, last season happened.
They weren't great last year. Do we start with Jaden Daniels' health? If we're doing it with Dart, do we do it with Daniels as well? He's been injured each of the last 2 years now.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, it would be one thing if it was just injuries and there had been no reason to be concerned about that as he came into the NFL. But that was the big negative on him coming into the league, was he plays like a crash test dummy. The guy has zero self-preservation instincts. He's just running around launching himself into hits left, right, and center. Like, that seems like a bad idea in the NFL. And he's been injured multiple times now. So those two things together, you would have to at least be a little bit worried about it.
So that's the first thing I would start with. Second one for me, wide receiver 2, same thing that we mentioned about the Giants. Now, look, there are rumors about Brandon Ayuk and Stephon Diggs, and maybe they can fix that. But as of right now, Van Jefferson, Treylon Burks, third-round pick Antonio Williams, second-year player Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey. I mean, those are the competitors for wide receivers 2 and 3. That's a concern. And I would just say the secondary as a whole. The Marshawn Lattimore experiment did not work.
Yeah.
Trading picks for an aging veteran who looked like an aging veteran. And Trey Amos heading into year 2, Mike Sanders still heading into year 3, Amik Robertson coming in here, Akello Witherspoon. It's not great on paper, just at corner. Safety might be a little bit better, but I'd say the back 7 or the secondary generally has some concerns.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I think the roster just is not in particularly good shape overall. I mean, there's a lot of areas we would look at it and say that's a fairly significant potential weakness on either side of the ball. I mean, the offensive line might have a couple of good players on it, does have a couple of good players in it, but the other few might be problematic. That was one thing when we were relying on a healthy Jaden Daniels to kind of, hide a bit of that. But if Jaden Daniels is more of an injury concern and you have to factor that in. The backfield is interesting. Rashad White, Bill, Krosky Merritt, like it's productive. But again, you sort of factor in the boost factor of Jaden Daniels. If you're thinking of it more just by itself, is it good enough for this offense to be a top-tier group? They just, across the board, feel like they're average now.
And I know we didn't see a ton of Jaden Daniels last year, but there's the general regression concerns. Washington fans hated when we mentioned that last year. Why would he regress? He's because we saw it with Baker Mayfield and C.J. Stroud and a lot of rookie quarterbacks who just weren't as good in year 2 because the league adjusts and you have to adjust back and it's just. But
also
part
the
of
way.
playing football.
I mean, remember the way that he was winning games that year. Like it was sort of improbable magic type stuff, right? And when that's the reason, it's like, oh. When you start talking about, he's just got the touch, the it factor, magic. When all the stuff you're talking about is sort of airy-fairy, he was to disappear.
But he was fantastic as a rookie. But they hit the highest end of fourth down variance.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you start talking about magic and clutch and it factor and all that sort of stuff, which generally isn't really a thing, And when that's the stuff you're describing and focusing on. The chances are that's going to go in the other direction next year. Now, that doesn't mean overall he won't still be good at that stuff, but like year to year, that's the stuff that tends to swing away, right? So like C.J. Stroud, great example. All of the stuff we were talking about after that first year was like, man, on third down, that guy was money. It's like, yeah, but that's the stuff that tends to disappear quickly year to year.
All right, man, we're moving quickly here. Very efficient here, going through the NFC East. We're on to the AFC East and the Buffalo Bills. Reasons for concern for the Bills. Can't win the big one.
Well, they fired a good head coach.
Oh, boy. Okay.
And they might not.
We don't know. We don't. I mean, we say that for every first-year head coach, right? Like, you don't know what he's going to do in the seat.
Right.
Joe Brady, first-year head coach. We don't know.
Yeah, but it's one thing when it's like, all right, the last guy had to go, and we just don't know if the new guy's any good. This was like you had a good head coach, pretty proven good head coach, and now you don't know that you have a head coach at all.
Yeah. So I would start with that's a thing, right? There's some questions there. I don't know if it's concern as much of just we don't know. It's a question mark. I would say the trade for DJ Moore at this point in his career, I'd say it's still more positive than negative, but could go south for DJ Moore.
Yeah,
it's probably fine.
It's interesting because he was kind of getting phased out in Chicago in favor of other players, but he does play in that role that they haven't had for a couple of years since they traded away Stephon Diggs. Like, he does operate largely in that kind of world. So I feel like it's an upgrade almost regardless of how it works out. It's more of a case of, like, was it value or not? Like, I think you can debate whether the move was good, whether they got value out of it, blah, blah, blah. But I think overall it's almost certain to be an upgrade.
Other things I'll add, they've had a really consistent offensive line as far as returning starters, plus health. They've been very healthy along the offensive line over the last couple of years. David Edwards out, so you've got a new left guard. Could be Alec Anderson, see what ends up happening there. The other thing I would say, pass rusher opposite Gregory Rousseau. I really like what the Bills have done from throw a ton of bodies at the defensive line. And look, Joey Bosa did a really nice job last year for much of the season. Had a couple rough games in there, but did a nice job as the pass rusher opposite Rousseau. You're getting an older Bradley Chubb. You've got TJ Parker in the second round, coming off of his disappointing season at Clemson. Do you have Michael Hoyt coming off injuries and PEDs? Do you have enough juice off the edge next to Rousseau? You got a lot of bodies. Do you actually have an elite or high-end pass rusher to complement Rousseau and some of the interior rush that they have?
Yeah, I mean, as much as the depth looks quite good in terms of names and bodies and numbers, it might still basically be a rotation that's two people strong, like Rousseau and Ed Oliver. And outside of those guys, they have a lot of names and players that you've invested stuff in.
Deion Walker was really good as a rookie overall, I'd say. He was good.
But I'm not sure they have any other impact playmaker there yet. Now, maybe they will. Maybe one will emerge, but it's entirely possible that that's a two-man rotation at the moment.
And I know it's a whole new scheme, so we'll see what's emphasized. I'd say linebacker's a question too. Matt Milano's, we've already seen him getting older, and we've already seen all the injuries, and there's already been a revolving door of linebackers the last couple of years. Dorian Williams, they draft Caleb Elam-Zor. There's just a lot of question marks there. They got Buffalo Joe. He could probably step in and play.
Linebacker, safety, and slot, that kind of triumvirate in the middle, I think is a question mark for them. I'm not sure they have the overall sort of ability in how it remains to be. A guy like C.J. Gardner-Johnson means we need to see how they plan on using him because he's gone from slot to safety, slot, blah, blah, blah. So we need to figure out exactly which way they're going to deploy all these guys, but that is a potential issue area, that kind of middle of the field axis.
All right, there's Buffalo. Let's go Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
Reasons for concern.
But they still have a terrible, terrible wide receiver room.
Yeah, I mean
with a new quarterback.
The concerns for the Dolphins in the short term are, the roster is just not there yet. All the optimism that we talked about was, they drafted 100 times and, had some high, some instant impact players, some high upside players, good mix. But for year one, I don't know if that's going to work at all. And you're right. I mean, the wide receiver room right now, especially with Chris Bell coming off of an injury, might be 32 of 32 in the NFL.
The concern for me would be exactly what it was when they traded away Jalen Waddle, which is you might have removed any chance that Malik Willis can look good at all, right? So you may end up going through this entire year with Malik Willis throwing to Jalen Tolbert and Tutu Atwell and the Washingtons and have no shot to look good at all, right? And if that happens and you end up this time next year, or even before this time, March next year, you're like, well, Malik Willis just looked terrible. On the other hand, who is he throwing to? What do we do with this now? So I think that's the biggest concern, is that it's not only is it terrible and therefore they won't win a lot of games, but it's so bad that it completely fouls the evaluation of Malik Willis. And now they either don't know that they have a quarterback, or worse, they think they don't when they might have had if they'd given him somebody to throw to.
Fair point, right? Getting the right read on Willis. I like a lot of the resetting moves that the Dolphins have made. They're still maybe not just a year away, 2 years away. I know you you can overhaul your roster pretty well in a year, but it still looks like it's 2 years away, and that's a reason for concern, right? You're relying so much on the youth movement, you don't know how all of that's going to hit.
And it's relatively low risk, the Malik Willis deal, in terms of even if they decide in the offseason, okay, he's terrible, we're going to move on. It's only they're only on the hook for like another half year's worth of guaranteed money. But the bigger point would be, what if he is the guy and you set him up for failure and you end up moving on from it? Like, he could then be the next Sam Darnold, right? He goes somewhere else, they give him some players to throw to, and he goes back to looking like the player he did in spot duty in Green Bay. You're like, man, Miami just screwed this guy. They had him in the building and got nothing out of him because his top receiver was Tutu Atwell, right? Like that's a realistic concern.
The other one I'll add on the defensive side, the reasons for optimism is that we said, look, Chop Robinson played better football 2 years ago, and Kenneth Grant kind of underachieved last year, but was better down the stretch. But that's also a reason for concern. Chop Robinson.
Yeah, what if they're not good
again?
Right,
regressing in year two. Kenneth Grant maybe not making the instant impacts that you expect for the 13th overall pick at defensive tackle. And then their entire back seven. Jordan Brooks played great last year. They're going to rely on Chris Johnson, who we like as a rookie, but the cornerback room, not great overall. Whole bunch of retreads, Juju Brents, Darrell Baker Jr., Storm Duck. It's just not – they just don't have a lot of talent on the back end. They got a lot of, reclamation projects, and they're sprinkling in the rookies.
If you're going to be named Storm Duck, you really have to be really, really good. Otherwise,
he's an NFL player. He is really good.
It's just too easy to joke about it, though. Like, when it's too easy to be like, Storm Duck is your top corner, and it's a joke that writes itself. You don't even need to write anything else on top of that. Like, if you're going to be Storm Duck, you basically need to be Darrelle Revis, otherwise you're going to be a punchline, which is unfortunate, because like you said, he's an NFL player. He's doing better than 99.999% of football players out there. However, he is a career punchline right now because his name is Storm Duck, and he's on a bad roster.
You don't want to rely on Storm Duck as a starting corner.
You don't, and that's a shame is what I'm saying.
I'm going to say something for the Jets next.
Okay.
Or when we get there. The other reason for concern, like, what if Malik Willis is really good and drags this roster? And I'm not saying he ruins the draft pick, because I think you still want it. They're still going to be drafting high next year, but it's not necessarily for a quarterback, so that part's good. But this roster is poised to be top five. I think a concern for Dolphins fans might be like, Malik Willis is good enough to get you to like the 15th pick, and you miss out on some of the blue chips next year.
I think that's okay, though. That's only my concern with that is only ever, do you miss out on the quarterback or the chance to get the quarterback? I think if Malik Willis is good enough that you're comfortable with the quarterback, yeah, sure. Like, it would suck to miss out on Jeremiah Smith or whatever, but you're still, it's less of a problem missing out on a blue chip player and just getting a draft pick than it is, oh no, we don't have any quarterback, we're toast. Like, if Malik Willis is good enough that it takes you to the 15th overall pick, I think you're happy having the 15th overall pick.
All right, let's go. New England Patriots, reasons for concern. What?
Well, the distraction of every 3 minutes there's a new Mike Vrabel and Diana Rossini photograph, and that appears to be getting drip-fed out.
Oh, my God. It's going like year by year.
Yeah, and will continue, I think. I mean, this is an orchestrated campaign. There's also, weirdly, have you seen there's some, like, random 49ers blogger out there who seems to have turned this into his life's mission to, like, investigate this entire situation?
Yeah.
There's some... Do you see the picture of Rossini kissing her husband at Mother's Day, right? And this guy had apparently... He was like, I'm not saying this is staged. Because remember, there's a report right at the start that maybe both of them, but I think certainly...
Of course that is. But of course it is.
Certainly Rossini had engaged the help of like a crisis management team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, the last one of those,
hopefully she fired the original one.
the last instance I'm aware of a PR sort of crisis management advice was pretty bad. But in this case... this guy was basically saying, look, I'm not saying this is staged, but if I was a crisis management firm staging this photograph for the PR, these are the elements that would exist, and all of them are within this photograph, right? And he'd apparently contacted, I forget who, whatever news thing reported on it, Page 6 or something or other, and was like, hey, have you considered the fact that you might be getting played on this? And they'd change the headline or whatever. Anyway, this guy's like, I've never seen anybody more down a rabbit hole like this for something that theoretically has absolutely nothing to do with him other than he's just decided it's interesting. Point being, there's a new one of these photographs out every 3 minutes now, and this doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. And I don't think Vrabel's going away anytime soon either, after his 3 minutes in therapy fixed him. So this is going to drag on all the way through the year. And on the optimism show, I was like, that's a galvanizing force. It's us against the world. But on the pessimism show, it's like, look, that's good. It's the distraction nobody wants. It's the distraction every team constantly tries to avoid, and it's going to be there all year for them.
From the no distractions head coach, right? The no nonsense,
right.
Just care about football, just want to win a Super Bowl, willing to sacrifice for a Super Bowl. That guy.
Just do your job. Take care of your business.
Right.
And now it's going to be Diana Rossini 24/7.
Football concerns. I've seen some rumblings that, look, the A.J. Brown trade is not necessarily like it's expected but not locked in, right? We've got a couple weeks before it's June 1st, and that stuff can go down. Could a team like the Raiders swoop in, right? So if someone swoops in and you don't get A.J. Brown, and all of a sudden you don't, and maybe they could bring Stephon Diggs back, maybe they want to, who knows? But you got Romeo Doubs, like the same thing we said on the optimism shows. You just add A.J. Brown to this receiving core, it looks great. If you don't have A.J. Brown, it's like, okay, who's your one? It's Romeo Doubs is in another world where he's in this receiving core where you say there's no number one, who you throwing to?
Well, also, even if they bring him over, what if he's the same as he was last season in Philadelphia, where for the first time you're like, that looked like a catchable ball. How come you didn't really go and try and get that? What if for some reason A.J. Brown is just one of these guys that starts to decline at the age of 28 and his career lasts shorter than other people's. Like, he's a big physical guy. Maybe for some reason that takes so. Maybe he's just lost interest in the game. But last season was the first time where, the year before was the year where he's on the sideline reading the book, and I was like, I had no problem with his play during that year. Therefore, I didn't care that he was reading a book on the sideline. This year, though, was the first where there were a sequence of plays where it looked like he wasn't giving maximum effort. And any one of those, my default tends to be there's a reason you're not aware of in the moment because you're not out there on the field. Something was a reason that he didn't go for that ball that you thought he should have gone for, right? Like when he was playing, it looked further. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason that the physics he's privy to that you're not, like, was the difference between what you think he should have done and what he actually did. That's my sort of default assumption almost all the time with football plays. But when you start stacking 5 or 6 of them together, then I think you've got a question to answer at least. Like, how come there's these 5 plays? Any one of them I would excuse away, but 5 of them, 6 of them put together sort of does feel like an effort problem. And if that's just who he is now, then he's not the player that you're trading for.
Beyond that, I would add Will Campbell's bounce back, right? Like, what you could maybe chalk up.
What if arm length's really important?
Yeah, I mean, you could probably chalk up the. I hate when there's confounding variables. Was he playing hurt down the stretch? Probably, right? That was probably a factor. They also ran into the Texans juggernaut, a pretty good group with the Chargers with Odafe Owe, a good Seattle group, and he just got smoked. And that's not uncommon with other parts of his rookie season where when he went up against good rushers, he did struggle even when he was healthy, and he had some help and what have you. Like, what if he can't hold it down at left tackle? Is that why they drafted Caleb Lomu at left tackle? So there's still some questions on the offensive line if everything doesn't come together. I would also, as from a pessimism standpoint, I'd ask, did they do enough from a pass rushing perspective, right? So you draft Gabe Akis in the second round out of Illinois, fine. Bring in Draymond Jones in free agency, Harold Landry returning. Is that enough, right? That was probably the biggest need this offseason, other than if they're trying to acquire this wide receiver one. The biggest need, was that addressed enough with Draymond Jones and Gabe Akis with Caleb Von Chason going out the door? So I'd say there were just some questions.
Also, they're not going to have one of the easiest schedules in NFL history again.
I mean, this is like, it's a reason for pessimism. Yeah, that's definitely right.
Yeah.
Pessimism show. I often say concerns. That's uncontrollable, but if you're going to be pessimistic about the Patriots season,
it's a factor.
Could they be a 9-win team this year with a more difficult schedule and actually be as good of a team? Yeah. That's absolutely.
I mean, their schedule last year ended up being literally one of the easiest in the history of the league.
Yep.
So even if you just put that, like, throw a dart at the middle, at the schedule, if you just put it somewhere in the middle, it's going to be harder.
All right, let's go New York Jets. Reasons for pessimism.
Geno Smith is their quarterback.
See,
Geno Smith was terrible last year. Abysmal.
Yeah, this is the one I'm going to say. Like, what if he's good, though?
Right, but this is a different show.
I know, but
what if he's the same as he was last year?
But I'm saying, what if he's good enough to get you to 7 wins and you miss out on your choice of quarterbacks? You get the 3 first-round picks. The other ones are, keep losing track of Colts and Packers?
Yeah.
Right? And so, yeah, what do you...
Packers? Oh, yeah.
Through the Cowboys.
Yeah.
So, like, what if they're not, they're 15 or higher? What if if I'm a Jets fan, I would be more concerned with Geno Smith reverting back, being untankable. You just tanked the Raiders. You just got them to the number 1 overall pick. Now that would be a career highlight. Geno Smith goes
back-to-back number 1 overall picks.
Yeah. Anyone else done that?
See, he goes from being tank-proof to being the tank quarterback.
Yeah.
I'll get you whoever you want. You point me at the kid that you're looking for next year. Arch Manning, got it. Don't worry. Locked in.
Cardinals picking him up the next year or whatever. And
I'll steer you right towards that stud that you're eyeing up in college. Don't worry about it.
Honestly, I mean, look, if we're just going to say pessimism for this year.
Well, then you can't do that because then there's no bad outcome for the Jets this year. There's nothing that could happen that isn't a positive thing.
I told you.
Because either they stink
bad
and therefore
outcome is you win 6 games and you're picking 10th.
Yeah, but I would then that's a good thing for this year. That's better than expectations.
All right, stick to this year. Reasons for pessimism.
Can't do
they're
that.
Still not talented enough. They're not there yet.
You can't do it that way because then there's no negative outcome for the season. My reason for pessimism would be that Geno Smith is your quarterback and he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league last year. And if he's so bad you have to bench him, then you might have to put in Kate Klubnik.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you got to put in Brady Cook, and that was even worse.
Man, that was bad. I would say secondary.
Brady Cook, by the way, should be out here dominating the UFL right now. Why is he not? If they not, there should be a system where you can second these guys off to the UFL.
That's true. He should be.
Because Brady Cook is the perfect. He would be a UFL MVP right now.
I would say, yeah, you could have a league.
Because I love that guy.
Maybe drop it in Europe.
He's a really bad NFL player.
Maybe put it in Europe and you can deploy.
That's expensive in Europe. The whole point about you got to keep it local.
That's why
Birmingham.
NFL Europe. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be able to.
But my point being, that guy, there's a level, Brady Cook, unfortunately, is below the level required to be a good NFL quarterback. But he's fun as hell. And if you put him in the UFL where the level is lower, he'd look great.
Yeah. I would say other concerns, cornerback, Brandon Stevens on the outside, opposite Nashawn Wright, coming off of his career year. Not a great unit. See how quickly D'Angelo Pons can get in there. But yeah, just rebuilding the secondary for short term here.
Stevens, not a great player. Nashawn Wright coming off a career year that was built almost exclusively off extremely high variance turnovers. If that just doesn't happen again, he's probably not very good. You will finally be right about Nashawn Wright, having trashed him all year.
Thank you.
And then if D'Angelo Pons simply can't play in the NFL because he's 5'8",
stop it.
It's the negative show. You're like, oh, let's see how quickly Pons get in there. What if Pons at 5'8" is simply not able to cover guys?
You weren't having it with Caleb Downs. Well, I can't. I'm not going to say he's slow and didn't work out.
Right, because Downs was literally the best player in the nation for basically 3 straight years. You can't say
Pons
that
was a top 10 player in the nation last year.
Is that the same?
It's pretty good.
The answer is no.
The answer
is no. That's not the same. So if Pons simply can't fly against 6'2", 210-pound receivers at the NFL level because he's 5'8", that's a problem.
Good reasons for the concerns with the Jets here. All right, new FanDuel right now. New FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right, turn $5 into $250 in bonus bets just for getting started. And when every possession matters in the playoffs, FanDuel makes it easy to get closer to the action. From player props on your favorite stars to all the tools you need to back them up. FanDuel puts player research right at your fingertips so you can check stats, trends, and matchups all in one place and make your picks with confidence. It's everything you need all in one app, so don't miss your shot. Head to FanDuel.com/33rd to get started. FanDuel, play your game. You got to be 21 plus in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, 18 plus in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, 1-800-MY-RESET. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. Call 800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Call 1-877-770-7867 in Louisiana. All right, we're on to the South now. South coming second here in the pessimism show. NFC South, starting with the Atlanta Falcons. Reasons for pessimism for Atlanta.
They might not have a quarterback. Michael Penix was pretty bad last year. Tua has been pretty bad for most of his career outside of Mike McDaniel.
Fair.
Therefore, you might not have a quarterback.
So quarterback questions, wide receiver questions beyond Drake London. Kyle Pitts coming off a career year. Can he keep it up? Pass catcher, though, definitely a big question. Like the whole pass game.
Yeah.
Kevin Stefanski coming in. Just a lot of turnover in Atlanta.
And people were roundly trashing Stefanski's offense by the end of his time in Cleveland. Now, was that just trying to get things to work for a series of bad quarterbacks, or has he lost it? Has the game passed him by?
Has the game passed him by? Can they keep it up pass rush-wise?
What if beard strength alone is not enough for a high-quality football team? You know, Stefanski...
Ulbrich?
Yeah, Ulbrich. It's the beard quality is off the charts, but what if that's not enough?
They'll probably be okay. We should have put that on the optimism show, though.
Yes.
Beard strength. Beard strength in Atlanta.
Elite level.
On the sideline
Beard strength
is incredible. Yeah, so I would say the pass game generally, a little bit of turnover on the offensive line, but they're in pretty good shape. But they don't have a great second. They really don't have a good second option next to Drake London, or at least at receiver. Pitts is fine.
Unless Kyle Pitts continue. Yeah.
Jahan Dotson, Olamide Zaccheaus, Dylan Drummond, Zachariah Branch, who they drafted, Casey Washington. Like, it's a slew of slot receivers.
No more David Sills.
It's like 1,000 slot receivers when all you need is a...
Your crutch in David Sills is gone. You gotta find another one.
I haven't scrolled far enough to go catch where David Sills is. Is he out? Is he there?
He's Tampa Bay. We've been through this yesterday.
Yeah, sorry.
He went with Zach. Zach needs David Sills in the rider.
Atlanta's losing Sills.
He's his green M&M, so he's gone with him to Tampa Bay.
Interior defensive line is a big question. Honestly, this could be as bad as the Giants.
The entire defensive line could still be a question. I understand that James Pierce Jr. has escaped legal consequences. However, anyone that had the kind of concerns he had coming into the draft and within a year ended up in that situation, you probably can't rely on long term. You know, whether or not the NFL suspends him for any period of time, I would have a clock on the wall ticking down to the next time James Pierce Jr. is in trouble for something. Meaning your pass rush may end up being Jalen Walker. The end.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a question there. I'd say defensive tackle. Ruka Rororo gets traded for Mason Smith. That's just a couple underachieving second-rounders, but I think Rook's probably a better player right now. David Onyemata had been a fantastic player for them for 3 years in free agency. You lose him. Mm-hmm. Caden Ellis at linebacker. I keep wanting to confuse him and Christian now, which is obnoxious in my brain. But you lose Caden Ellis, who I think has been one of the most underrated linebackers in the league. They've lost some players.
Yeah.
So Ian Cunningham comes in at GM, and Kevin Stefanski as head coach. They've lost some talent, and they're trying to build it back up again. So I think those are all reasons for pessimism for the Falcons for this year. Mm-hmm. Carolina Panthers, reasons for pessimism. Is it just Bryce Young's inconsistency to start with here?
Yeah, probably. If he just doesn't get any better or actively takes a step backwards, then all the roster improvement that they've done is, it's not for naught, but it's not going to do anything because obviously that's the most important position.
We're also in this tricky spot. I've mentioned it on a couple other shows, but it's worth rehashing here. There was a point where every next starting quarterback just made $50 million and you moved on.
Yeah.
But because the last time we had a lot of quarterbacks drafted was 2020, where at least they were all good and they all got paid. 2021, there was the 5 first-rounders. Only Trevor Lawrence survived that and got paid. 2022 was the Kenny Pickett year. And yes, you had Brock Purdy at the end, but just talking about the high-end first-rounders. So Purdy got paid. 2023, which one was 20? Oh, 23 is where we are. Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. So, they're the next class that's up. And Stroud comes with his own question marks, but you feel a little bit better about him. Bryce Young has even more questions at this point. Was there a point where we thought, hey, look, Bryce could be in CJ territory and everything? And a few times he did, but certainly not week to week.
Well,
so now that's where we are. Like, there has not been a lot of these quarterbacks paid recently, and one of the two, Tua and Trevor Lawrence, were probably like the biggest. Are these right? Trevor Lawrence came good last year. Tua is the first $50 million quarterback that's been moved on from.
Yeah, so that it feels like the worst thing that could happen from Carolina's perspective is that Bryce Young plays just about well enough this year to get himself the $50+ million contract, the Tua contract, and then goes backwards, right? Like, the worst thing that they could do is end up trapped in a situation where you have to pay the quarterback the contract, and the contract ends up just being a disaster for them. And Bryce Young actually, that entire class, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, feel like the type of quarterbacks that there should be a middle ground deal for them somewhere, right? Now, I don't know if those exist anymore until a guy has been forced to move on from the team that drafted him. Like, it almost feels like the team that drafted the quarterback is stuck in this binary world still, where we either give them the market deal or we walk away. But, like, given the inconsistencies of both guys, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, like, neither one of those guys should be getting a deal that starts with a 5 in terms of annual per year, and yet either one of them could by the end of this year.
So there's general pessimism about Bryce Young and his consistency, and we've been big Bryce Young supporters even when the stats didn't match up. His turnaround in 2024 in year 2, a lot of his play in 2024, we thought the whole second half he looked like a completely different quarterback.
Yeah.
Had some high hopes for him last year, and outside of a few games, it wasn't there for Bryce. It really was like a week-to-week thing. So we'll see what happens for this year. But it's definitely a reason for pessimism, because in the optimism show, we're like, hey, this roster's in a lot better shape than it was 2 years ago, liking that. But if Bryce Young doesn't take a step forward, might not show up. The schedule thing, too, using projected wins, they're at one of the hardest schedules. They're in like top 3 most difficult schedules here, despite being in the South, the NFC South.
Hard schedule. The backfield, I don't think, is amazing with Chuba Hubbard, Trevor Etienne. Jonathan Brooks still working his way back off injury. Who knows, A, when he'll be back, B, if he'll ever be the player that he looked like he could have been when they drafted him. They still don't really have a tight end. I mean, remember we were matching them all the time with Kenyon Sadiq in the first round at presumably the displeasure of the doctor, because they don't want to, you don't want to spend a first round pick on a tight end. Well, they didn't, and now they don't have a tight end still. It's still Jadavian Sanders as tight end 1 effectively on this team, who has yet to look like he's capable of nailing down that spot. So running back, tight end may still be fairly significant gaps on that offense.
Yeah, it might be. Is that the worst tight end group in the NFL?
It's got to be.
Bottom 3? It's up there. So tight end's a concern.
Particularly, by the way, in today's NFL, where we just witnessed an offseason where there was nothing more important than securing tight end 2 and 3 on the roster, and Carolina might not have tight end 1.
Right. And I liked the 2 big offseason moves that they made, Devin Lloyd and Jalen Phillips, but they come with questions of their own. Lloyd's had some ups and downs production-wise. Jalen Phillips has had the injury concern. So while I thought those were the right moves and everything, and they've thrown a lot at their pass rush, 1 or 2 injuries up front, and I think they're a little fragile there. So maybe center as a question mark as well. Serviceable players there. But
secured their starter in the draft.
Potentially. Sam Hecht. A lot of people like Sam.
Yeah.
Let's go New Orleans Saints. Reasons for pessimism for the Saints.
Well, it's got to be Tyler Shuck, and it could be one of 2 ways. Either, last season was simply a small sample size, and you end up getting the worst of Tyler Shuck this year. Or the other thing being, remember, he had this ridiculous injury history where, like, just bits of him would just break randomly. Like, he do nothing.
You could argue their 3 most important players have serious injuries.
There you go. Yeah, I like the Giants.
How's that?
Good. I like it.
Tyler Shuck, Jordan Tyson,
Yep.
Chris Olave. Mm-hmm. They're 3 most important players. I mean, you could argue Chase Young or
also
a corner. I mean, Chase Young's had it too.
Right.
I'm saying you could argue a couple of their offensive linemen are important and everything. I'm just saying, like, their biggest impact players all have an injury history. Olave's happened in the NFL with all of his concussions, and then Tyson and Shuck, both their last 2 not first-round picks, but 2 of their top picks with extensive college injury history. And just like Michael Penix Jr., who had the extensive injury history, didn't show up till year 2.
There you go.
Him. So is that good pessimism?
Yeah, it's
Shuck's
good.
going to get hurt.
Shuck's also got that thing where, remember, he had they had a series of them, actually, of like the most inexplicable, ridiculous, turnover-worthy type plays you've ever seen in your life. And then really didn't show that last year. Is that something you can remove from is that innate, Did he just avoid it for like 8 games? But it's just waiting. It's lurking around the corner. Yeah. Like we're only a couple of games away from Tyler Shuck regressing into Will Levis.
To get Zach Wilson as a backup, I want one more chance. I want one more shot at Zach Wilson.
No.
Learned under Sean Payton last year. He's got Kellen Moore. Now give me one more shot of Zach Wilson. That's who the Cardinals should be trying to roll out there this year.
Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson. Absolutely.
Can you imagine selling that to a fan base? Great news. Zach Wilson's the starter this year.
It's the bridge to Arch.
Yes.
Anyway, the other Saints concerns, I would say, secondary is still a question. Kool-Aid McKinstry, I thought, came on last year. I think the other cornerback spot remains a question mark. Slot, nickel, replacing Alontae Taylor remains a question. Defensive tackle has been a multi-year issue for the Saints. I do like the Christian Miller pick in round 2, but beyond that, Brian Brzee has not developed, certainly not in the run game. Devon Godshaw is just, serviceable at this point. Nathan Shepard. They need more production out of their defensive tackle group.
And even Miller, rookie defensive tackle, they don't always hit the ground running. Like that might still be a real weakness as a group this year.
Kenneth Grant started out struggling last year. Johnny Newton hasn't figured it out. I mean, there's a lot of
position that generally struggles across the board to make an instant impact.
So I think those are all fair concerns for the Saints. Overall, I mean, go to the optimism show, Saints fans. We had some nice things to say, but
looking for good things.
The concerns are still there. And you could say injuries, like you could just list injuries for every team, like if a guy gets hurt.
Right.
But we're listing them when a player has a history there. And the Saints have a few of those players.
I mean, Olave has got now a long list of concussions, like to the point where you need to seriously think about whether you can commit the kind of long-term big money contract that he's going to be commanding this year. That's why you bring it up for Olave. Again, the injuries with Jordan Tyson, everyone was so focused on those right up until he did his pro day. And then Tyler Shuck. Again, it's not that he's been injured. It's that certainly one of those major injuries in college was it was basically non-contact. He just dropped back and his leg fell off.
He was a year 6 player for a reason.
Yeah. Like these are major injury histories as opposed to a guy has simply been injured and therefore could be injured again.
All right, let's round out the NFC South with the Tampa Bay Bucs. Reasons for concern.
What if Baker Mayfield is simply a mid-quarterback that will only ever be a mid-quarterback and won't take you any further than that?
So he heads into his last year of his deal. They said they want to get something done. And he signs the middle class deal, right?
After signing the nothing deal.
He signed the nothing deal and then earned the $33 million a year, which is
Tampa
really
Bay,
good value, by the way.
Tampa Bay effectively ended up with a starting quarterback off the back of a $4 million deal for 1 year. Baker's stock was as low as it can possibly get by the end of everything when Tampa Bay brought him in. It wasn't even clear that he would be the starter over Kyle Trask. And then he ends up obviously being clearly better than Kyle Trask, getting the starting job, earning the mid-tier, middle-class quarterback contract. And now it's like, no, we're definitely convinced with Baker as our guy going forward. And yet he's definitely been solid. And at times, he's a streaky quarterback where he can go on these runs where he's money on third down and does amazing things. It's really been since that second, third year in Cleveland where he's put it together for a real stretch of time where it looked like he could be very, very good. Outside of that, it's only ever been 8 games of that.
Yeah, so inconsistency with Baker Mayfield is a good starting point. You have Bucky Irving still not cleared.
Really?
For contact right now. He's had a lot of injuries the last couple of years. I know he was dealing with some stuff, and so maybe some questions in the backfield. Losing Mike Evans at receiver plus Chris Godwin aging. I mean, it's
a serious injury history with him.
Yeah, so you've got loved what Emeka Ibuka did last year, but Jalen McMillan got hurt early last year. I think it just feels fragile there. If they're all healthy, it's probably fine, but they're fragile.
Well, my concern with Godwin is no longer what if he gets hurt again. It's now what is he at the end of all these?
Agreed.
Remember one of the saddest scenes from last year was Godwin having basically just worked his way back from a major injury into the lineup, gets hurt in a major way again, and he's sort of sitting on the motorized stretcher, the cart, and the camera zooms into him, and it was unclear exactly what he said, but it was either like back to work or we go again or whatever. Like, dude who basically just spent the last year of his life rehabbing to get back onto the field, and then now knows he's got to spend the next year of his life in exactly the same situation rehabbing again. It's crushing, right? But like, he's now had a series of these back to back to back. Even if he gets back, what is he anymore? Like, he might not be the player that he was when he first started dealing with all this.
So those are some of the offensive concerns. I would say the guard position, too, is on the weaker end relative to the rest of the NFL. They've got all their starters back, but see how they all fit in the new system with Zach Robinson calling the plays now. Defensively, I think they addressed pass rush with Ruben Bain. They didn't necessarily address some of the coverage issues at linebacker, so they got Alex Anzalone, but Servassier Dennis probably battling second-round rookie Josiah Trotter. I thought Trotter had some of the same playing in space, coverage issues that Servassier has. So did you get another run-stopping linebacker? That's a little redundant. So, some coverage issues, I would say there. Questions?
You obviously lost the great Levante David, who's moved on, even though it was the right time to do it, because I think he's just hit the edge now of his career where it looks like he's done. But you don't have him in the lineup anymore, and he's been an ever-present for years. And the other question would be, now I can't remember, did we mention this in the Optimism show, that Zach coming in might fix Todd Bowles' defense by telling him how easy it is to exploit?
Yes.
Like, if I can get Kirk Cousins to hang 500 on you, this is how it works.
Day one, how I got Kirk to throw 500.
So like the Optimism show would be Todd Bowles learning all the flaws in his defense and fixing them in the space of an offseason. The Pessimism show would be the defense remains as easy to exploit as it is, and the only, just because Zach now happens to be on the team on the other side of the ball doesn't mean other people aren't able to therefore exploit this Todd Bowles defense, which, is one of the more unusual, extreme defenses in the NFL in terms of how it operates. Maybe it's starting to, I'm not saying, again, the line that we use for Stefanski, has the game passed him by? I don't think the game has passed by Todd Bowles, but it might be a real concern that this defense is too exploitable.
Even just personnel-wise, the cornerback position, Zion McCollum, he had a big breakout 2024 season, wasn't as good last year. And then I liked the way they tried to future-proof the position. Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean, a couple corners out over the last couple of years. McCollum stepped in. They drafted 2 players last year. Move on from Dean, but you didn't see great play from Benjamin Morrison, who had his own injury history and concerns. Jacob Parrish did a pretty good job, but now is he playing inside, playing outside? Maybe some concerns there, generally in the secondary. But it's a lot of youth, right, between Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish, Keontae Scott, who's not young in age, but young in, he's a rookie. So, some concerns there for the Bucs.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go AFC South now. Start with the Houston Texans. I was very optimistic about the Texans.
Yeah.
My most pessimistic take on the Texans is, what if C.J. Stroud implodes again? I mean, it was bad. You only use the implode thing when it's outside of character, right? Like C.J. Stroud turning the ball over and playing as poorly as he did against Pittsburgh and New England, was out of character.
He was terrible in those games.
And you would say, I still think you would say his best play was his rookie season. I still believe that, right? There was spurts in year 2, and there's too many times in Stroud's career so far where I think he gets, it's not the yips necessarily, but he gets on the bad end of streaky. The Seattle game, and look, and it's against good defenses too, right? It's not like he just stops throwing, like he just doesn't know how to throw, but he gets rushed. The Seattle game on Monday Night Football, he's missing open throws or throwing it to the defense. Like, these things come in bunches and against good defenses. So there's like an excuse, but it's like, hey, if the Texans are going to go from Final 8 team to get into the conference championship and trying to compete for a Super Bowl, you got to play well against these good defenses. And I don't think we've seen it from Stroud these last couple of years.
I feel like humans being hardwired to pattern match, you sort of try and discern what the pattern is and all the various disparate pieces of evidence you see in front of your eyes. I think that his rookie season kind of broke the pattern match in your brain because he was this strange prospect where for his entire college career he had generally struggled under pressure or sort of off platform, and if he was left alone in the pocket he could deal. He had a good arm, he could pinpoint, throw the ball around, and it was great. And if he was under pressure, if you got to him a bit, things fell apart a bit. And then he got to the college football playoff, and he went up against this elite Georgia defense, stacked top to bottom with like elite talent on the defensive side, NFL players all over the place. And he was under pressure like every single snap and absolutely balled out and looked phenomenal. And it was like, well, that one game answered every single question you had about him for his entire college career. Like on the one hand, you got this one game against the best competition on the biggest stage. On the other hand, you have like 15 times more evidence that says the opposite. What the hell do you do with that? And then year one, it looked like the Georgia game, right? So it's like, well, okay, somehow that one game was worth more than all of these other games combined. And in the NFL, he looks like he's going to be this player. But actually, if you take away that rookie season, it looks more like the other side. So it's like you're still weighing up what exactly is he? Is he this guy that's shown that on the biggest stage against the best defense, he can be an elite, high-end NFL quarterback? Or is he actually the guy that, broadly speaking, is really good if you keep him clean, but is going to struggle pretty badly if you start putting him under pressure and making him, move off his spot and just generally getting into bad habits? And I think most of his career says he's the second guy, but there's like a game and a season that make you question that completely. And now we're still in this world heading into this year where even the Texans, I don't think, know what the hell he is.
I think they have faith in him, and I think most teams look at the quarterback position a little bit differently than we do, where I think we lean more heavily on you really want a top 8 guy that you can trust, and you're going to win more over time if you do that. And I think they're more likely to take the serviceable starter. But
yeah, but
they're about to make the same decision that the Panthers have to make on Bryce Young. Is he the next $50+ million? And that's a different discussion.
And I don't know if Bryce, he's the right comp because they're the same year heading into the same contract discussion, but I don't know. So what's interesting is I think you're right that NFL teams see it differently to other people, but a lot of the reason for that is they look at the sort of stuff of, the behind the scenes leadership stuff, right? Is he the guy? Is he the leader?
Right.
Is he the guy that everyone's going to organize themselves around, follow, blah, blah, blah. That's where I think a guy like Baker Mayfield gets boosted, right? Because Baker's confidence, his sort of swag in and around the building gets people to gravitate towards him. And I think a team is going to be like, well, yeah, once you've decided he's good enough on the field, you're like, yeah, of course he's our guy. Like, he's a leader. I don't know that Stroud exudes that kind of stuff, right? I actually think that's a potential area where, again, they still don't really know exactly what he is. Is he this, real leader that everyone's going to follow, or is he this sort of sometimes guy?
I think, but I also think I don't want to say give him a pass, but I think they also acknowledge, hey, we haven't done the best job.
Sure.
Offensive line-wise, maybe finding the right offensive coordinator fit, play calling. Like they're looking at the environment. Are the receivers good enough? They're going to look at all of that and say, have we done enough? Because year one was promising.
Yeah.
And if we have the right mix, we've seen that he can do it. So I think that's where the Texans are going to lean. And I'm nitpicking a little bit with this because I think they're a really good team and a really good roster. And I think the other stuff that could go south, maybe the mix of guards and centers that they brought in don't work out. Like that could be a reason for concern.
Oh, I think there's still definitely a world where that offensive line is not good.
Yeah. Are they too fragile? I love the defensive line. Are they too fragile at edge with Will Anderson and Donnell Hunter, where if one of those go down, again, you could say, if everybody loses their stars. Yeah. But are they too fragile with those two guys? Maybe. But I love the defense overall. I love all the stuff.
Particularly with but with losing effectively the third edge rusher in terms of snaps this offseason, right? Like if they did lose one of those two, which again is probably unfair, because you could say that with everybody. But if they did lose one of those two, you would be down to one guy who's got.
But they're
any
so
kind of track
good,
record.
it's more so than anyone else.
Yeah.
You know that's an issue. Anyway, the Stroud thing is the biggest concern for me, and I don't normally care about this stuff, but I remember mentioning Derek Carr for him coming out, and how Derek had some up and down seasons. He struggled under pressure at times. He threw the ball well downfield at other times. Just had was a good starting quarterback career where the stats would pop some seasons and down other seasons. Stroud's won a lot more games than Carr overall, but it was the type of quarterback that I saw, and I don't know if he's just settled into that, and that might, any quarterback that's in the 10 to 20 range in rankings is a real hot button issue. You either really believe in him or you don't, and there's no middle ground. But I don't think it's an insult to say that he's a lot like Derek Carr as a quarterback. But
yeah, I mean,
what he's been the last couple of years.
Yeah, the area of concern would be Stroud plus an offensive line that could still be pretty rough. Like we've been saying, there's a starting five in that offensive line that's good. There's also a starting five in that offensive line that's well below average, and that will remain the case. Like Wyatt Teller is coming off the opposite of a career year. Like he looks, based off last year, is well into the decline of his career now. Maybe that was just a buy low opportunity. Braden Smith isn't coming off the best year of his career. He's been a really good player as well. Keelan Rutledge was seen as one of the biggest reaches in the draft when you adjust for how early in the draft it was. Generally speaking, the history of those guys is not good. So there's definitely a world where like that entire starting five is still a below average unit, paired with a quarterback that, whether you want to blame him or the team, paired with a bad offensive line generally isn't a good thing. So that would be your concern there. The defense should be good. The only concern there would be in the NFL, it's very hard to maintain elite level defenses year on year. And even if there's no reason for regression, it just tends to happen that way. That, we talk about the 2015 Broncos. We don't talk about the 2016 Broncos. We talk about the 2013 Seahawks. We don't talk about the 2014 Seahawks. Like, it's just really hard to maintain a scary elite level defense for more than like 1 year at a time. They had that last year. There's no particular reason why it won't be there again this year, except that it doesn't tend to.
They could just regress to 2024 levels where they were very good, great. But not what I thought was going to be elite and legendary, which was elite last year. All right, let's go Indianapolis Colts. Reasons for concern.
You just gave a guy coming off an Achilles the money to be your starting quarterback again.
Yeah, that'd be the starting point.
A guy who, was already on a downturn in terms of form. Okay, we can say that's a knee injury, but still, you're basically, how many games did he even make it? 8 games in terms of deciding he's the guy, right? Remember, the Giants ran him out of the building after mistakenly giving him a contract. He resuscitated his career as like the scout room quarterback in Minnesota, decided he didn't want to take that job in Minnesota again, was going to sign with the Colts because it was an easier pathway to the starting gig, got the starting gig over Anthony Richardson, played outstanding for a month, good for a month, average for a month, albeit with a knee injury, and then tore his Achilles. And this is a quarterback who is actually quite a rushing threat. Like an Achilles for him feels like a bigger deal than it would be for a guy who stands in the pocket and doesn't move. So it's a really small sample size of high-end play, and he's coming off an Achilles injury when typically he would run quite a lot.
He's just got an injury history.
And then, then 3 and 4 on that list being he's got an injury history and he's Daniel Jones.
Right. So that's a concern to start. And then you say, okay, what's been the depth, I think, has been chipped away at on the offense. You lose Michael Pittman Jr. at receiver, so
not just losing him, but like trading him away is. I mean, okay, maybe you can talk about the value and age and blah blah blah, but he was a very good player for them for quite a number of years, and you paid a ton to keep Alec Pierce. The thing that defines Alec Pierce has still been very much he's good for 150-yard catch a game, but it's a pretty low volume guy. So if you've traded away the high volume guy, you're now projecting Josh Downs to step up and be like some combination of Josh Downs and Tyler Warren. Effectively have to pick up all the slack that you lose in trading away Michael Pittman.
Yeah, for every time I always say, stack these great receivers and, push everybody down the depth chart. They're going the opposite, right? They're putting more on Alec Pierce's plate, maybe putting more on Josh Downs' plate. And
Everybody's got to step up the depth.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have a direct Pittman
Right.
replacement. So I think that's a concern paired with Daniel Jones coming off the injury. I would say right tackle, Jalen Travis. I put him in the optimism show, but, you don't. Braden Smith has more of a history of being dependable at right tackle.
Yeah.
He's out. Jalen Travis did a nice job, but he was supposed to be a developmental tackle.
Max Crosby was just talking up Braden Smith as being one of the best tackles in the NFL.
Despite having sub 33-inch arms.
Well, his big thing was he doesn't say a word. He doesn't trash talk.
Oh, I love that.
Max loves getting into it with offensive linemen. We're going to war and then trash talk back and forth. He's like, Braden Smith's just like a wall. He just stands there, just blocks you and doesn't say a damn thing.
Just doesn't respond. I love it. Let's see. Defensively, I would say, you've got to replace Kenny Moore now at nickel. So a bit of a question there.
Another
linebacker.
voluntary, not downgrade, but a voluntary.
Yeah, guys get older and you have to move on, but you just don't necessarily see direct replacements that you have faith in on the roster right now.
Yeah.
Probably relying on rookie C.J. Allen at linebacker. The linebacking core is not great. And DeForest Buckner showed signs of, had an injury last year for the first time in his career.
Like Ivan Drago. He can be hurt.
Yeah, DeForest. Little regression from Grover Stewart. So defensive tackle.
What if Sauce Gardner is just a natural born loser?
And he's just a loser.
He's just going to win.
Football
He's going to win two games every year. You just can't get it out of him.
1-13 last year.
Yeah.
Sauce Gardner, great player. What's the opposite of force multiplier?
Or, born winner. He's just a born loser. You just can't win games with him. It's unfortunate. He's a great player, but unfortunately you just can't win football games as long as he's on the field.
Force divider, Sauce Gardner.
Force divider.
That's the Colts. We're just being pessimistic today. It's just where we are. It's Sam's time to shine. Jacksonville Jaguars. Be pessimistic about the Jags.
The player that you drafted to be two players is in fact none of them because he's injured all the time. Brian Thomas Jr. was a flash in the pan. Trevor Lawrence is going to go back in the tank because he cut all his hair off. Yeah, that's a good starting point.
Yeah, I would just say high level question would be, first off, I think they overachieved last year, an impressive job. Like if Trevor Lawrence is what he was after the switch flipped,
yeah,
they're in good shape.
Sure.
But he's switched to flipped a switch other times in his career.
Yes.
And it hasn't been. So can he sustain? Show it to me for a full season.
It's the longest run that he's had. However, we have seen false dawns before.
And look, every time you say Trevor Lawrence started slow last year, we prefaced it last year and said Trevor Lawrence didn't play well, and the receivers were running wrong routes and dropping passes. A lot of stuff was bad about the offense, but Lawrence was not good at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
In addition to maybe some other receiving questions. He was awesome in the second half. So we've now seen, I would say you've seen a year out of 5 of elite play from Trevor Lawrence. It just happened to be the second half of the 2022 season and the second half of the 2025 season. So
it also didn't end particularly well, by the way.
No, it didn't. It didn't end, in the playoffs.
Right.
So I think that's a question. Just start with Lawrence and Liam Cohen, the ability to, again, it's not as simple as just run it back, right, and do what you did last year. And then I would just say from a roster perspective, did they do enough this offseason to improve? Because it's really tough in the NFL to just run it back with the same group and not improve. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, Devin Lloyd's out at linebacker. I don't know if they've done enough in the secondary. I don't know if they're great. I don't know if they've done enough in a few spots. Defensive tackle was a huge question for me coming into the offseason. With Eric Armstead getting older, they bring in Ruka Rororo. They drafted Albert Regis. I just don't know if they've done enough in a few of those spots there. So those would be reasons for pessimism for the Jags.
Yep. And I think I joked, but the Travis Hunter thing would be a real reason for pessimism. What if Travis Hunter is simply physically unable to hold up to the rigors of being a two-way player at the NFL level, and you're faced with a choice of either he plays one position, in which case he still needs to become a high-level player at either one of those positions. He's shown a lot of good, and I think there are reasons for optimism that he could be good at either one, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen yet. So either you need to pick a position, and he needs to become very good at that, or he's just going to be hurt too often to be good at either. And you've just got this guy who theoretically is this amazing, unique weapon, and you just can't ever keep him healthy enough to make use of it.
All right, let's round out the AFC South. Tennessee Titans, reasons for pessimism.
It's probably just that they're still not talented enough across the board. There's just not enough. The roster's just not good enough.
That's my starting point. I think they've done some nice things. I think a lot of their moves, I have questions about a lot of their free agent moves. Alontae Taylor and Wan'Dale Robinson, and they brought in a lot of
all the people that had previously been
Daniel
coached
Bellinger.
by.
They brought in a lot of former Giants and Alontae. Alontae was the first non-connection between Saleh and Brian Daboll. Like Jermaine Johnson trade for Devondre Sweat. I don't know if that's an upgrade necessarily, right? You different positions, but it's kind of like a lateral move as far as on-field talent. And you still have Sweat for 2 more years of control. So I think, just an overall, is the talent there yet? Question mark. And then a lot of the players that they got were coming off of, contract year spikes, basically. Cordell Flott, Alontae Taylor, Wan'Dale Robinson. Can they all keep it up? So I think the roster is moving in the right direction, but there's a chance they're just not there yet, and that they're just a 5 or 6 win team again. Especially if Cam Ward, even if Cam Ward does develop and he gets better, there's a chance it's just not there yet for the team.
Yeah, the concern there is, okay, Carnell Tate we loved as a draft pick, and it's the move we would have made, but what if the other people were right? What if Malik Neighbors is right, and Carnell Tate just can't be a number 1 wide receiver, right? And so now you just got number 2 wide receiver Carnell Tate as the best guy in your depth chart, then number 2 receiver Calvin Ridley as the second best guy in your depth chart, with number 3 wide receiver coming off a career year, Wan'Dale Robinson, with Ayamainer and DK, and it still looks like a pretty terrible wide receiver core.
So, that would be some of my concerns. You could also, pessimism would be, what if Cam Ward just doesn't necessarily take that year 2 leap overall? Roster-wise, right guard still a question. Center's a bit of a question.
It's the pessimism show. The whole offensive line outside of Skoronski is a question still.
The whole offensive line's a man. J.C. Latham hasn't developed. Dan Moore's Dan Moore.
Mm-hmm.
And, some questions.
Feel good about Skoronski. Don't feel good about the other 4 spots.
Keldrick Falk can't rush the passer, and you took him in the first round.
What if there is more to identifying roster upgrades than simply whether your coach knows that player or not?
Yeah.
The
pass rush is still generally a concern, right?
Yeah.
Jermaine Johnson adds a little bit off the edge, but he's got his injury history, and he's been okay. Keldrick Falk has to develop as a pass rusher.
Simmons and John Franklin Myers are solid and better than solid. Should be impactful pass rushers. Outside of those 2, it's question marks.
So question marks on both lines still. A little bit in the secondary. And, receivers I think better, and then you see what happens with Cam Ward's development. So, reasons for concern there. We're halfway through.
Yeah.
With the East and the South done. Quick break to talk about our friends over at Root Insurance. Root Insurance believes that good drivers deserve better rates, so they've created a new kind of car insurance that rewards good drivers in an easy-to-use app. Traditional car insurance companies focus on demographics like age, zip code, occupation, and credit score to price your coverage. But when Root offers a rate, your behavior behind the wheel gets more weight than any other single factor. They don't use occupation or education level to negatively affect your rate. While you drive, Root gathers and analyzes data from your smartphone sensors, and after a few weeks, you'll get a car insurance quote based primarily on your driving. Save up to 44% off your initial Root quote after you take the test drive. If you need a tow truck, jump start, or lock your keys in the car, Root will cover the help you need to get back on the road when you opt into roadside assistance. The Root app makes it easy to edit your coverage, update your policy, or file a claim in just 3 minutes. You get started today at Root.com. All right, where are we off to here? The West. We got to go NFC West. Arizona Cardinals. Reasons for pessimism for the Cardinals.
Their quarterback.
We got to do roadside assistance. We are going to do roadside assistance first. And we don't have a team to fix because it's the pessimism show. We're not fixing anybody today.
They're all broken.
We're just going to, tell you why they're broken.
Yeah.
But what needs fixing is the Mustang, apparently.
Yeah. So, we've been at this a couple of weeks, right? Turned out it was quite an extensive job to rip out the interior of a Mustang, put it all back together again, having sound deadened it and insulated it and dynamited it and all the other stuff that I did to it. However, yesterday was the final stretch. I thought it was going okay, right? It was a grind, getting the seats back in was a pain. carpet. It was brutal. Put in new door sills, which it turns out are razor sharp, right? Like, people use the term razor sharp a lot. I'm like genuine razor sharp. Like, you squeeze these things, you're slicing multiple fingers open. So that was a revelation. But we went from bare metal to it looks great now, right? Like, I would say, look at that.
Looks good, yeah.
The positive side of this is it looks fantastic.
So what needs roadside assistance, Sam?
Well, the downside is I have ruined it, and it's undrivable. Because unfortunately, what I've done is between the new carpet and the Dynamat and the insulation, starting to stack layer on layer. So the clutch pedal doesn't really go all the way to the floor anymore, which means it won't go into gear. And that would be a problem by itself.
Why didn't you consult with me before you got into this?
That would be a problem by itself, but it's made even worse by the fact that the new console is fouling the shifter, right? So the clutch can't go all the way engaged, but also the gear can't go all the way into gear either. So you basically, those two things put together, you basically can't drive the car right now. So I'm left with a choice of either I try and fix these two things myself, right? Now, you can adjust the clutch pedal, so I may need to try that and see if I can raise the pedal off the floor a little bit and make that work. The console, so it's also trapped in by the seat. It needs to go a little bit to the left, but it can't because the seat is there and it's jammed right in there, right? So you see it's basically wedged right in there between the seats. So the hole opening for the gear shifter is not large enough and or the console isn't far enough to the left, right? So since the console can't go any further to the left because of the seat, I need to basically take the console out and probably increase the size of the hole in it. And that won't be that easy because, number one, I don't have the tools to do that. And number two, it's upholstered. So I would need to somehow protect the leather, open the hole wider. It's a nightmare.
So you got a lot to do.
So I either need to figure out, can I DIY my way out of the hole that I dug myself? Or is this the chance where you just cut your losses and pay a professional to fix what you messed up in the first place?
Time. Root can fix a lot and help a lot. I don't think they can help you with this. Can't help you with your DIY gone wrong.
It was so... I was so close, right? The final day, the seats were a bit of a pain to get back in. One of them went in okay, actually, to be fair. Second one was a giant pain. There was a bunch of little fitment things at the end. Then it was all done. I'm like, oh, this is great. It's back together again. I'll take it, a quick spin around the block to see what it did, sound-wise. And then it's like, no, it turns out I've ruined it. It just doesn't work.
Can't do anything.
I've broken the car. It's completely undrivable now. And now I'm like crestfallen. Because I'm in this choice of do I try and fix two more things that I don't know what I'm doing with, or do I go and pay money, probably a lot of it, to some guy to fix what I ballsed up in the first place?
One more DIY shot. Get yourself out of this mess here.
I mean, here's the thing, right? If I fix the clutch pedal, then I can at least just remove the console and it will drive. Now, it will look bad because under the console is just a hole cut into the carpet, but it will work, right? So theoretically, I could at least make it drivable by fixing one of the two things.
Yeah, do that.
And then I have some time to work out how to properly fix the second thing.
Clutch matters a lot more. Go
it
attack
does.
That this
clutch,
weekend.
Without the clutch, it doesn't work.
This weekend.
Yeah.
You'll be back on the road by Memorial Day. You got this.
Great.
Root.com. Go check it out. Now we're on to the NFC West. Arizona Cardinals. Reasons for pessimism for the Cardinals.
Let's just read the quarterback depth chart, which begins with a somewhat disgruntled Jacoby Brissett, a somewhat injured Gardner Minshew, a somewhat not that good Carson Beck, and Keaton Slovis.
Good for Keaton, still being around. Yeah, they don't have a long-term quarterback option, I think would be the starting point. And they just guaranteed the most running back money in the league to Jeremiah Love with the 3rd overall pick. Who's a great player, but
What if drafting a running back at 3 overall is still a bad idea?
Fair question. So, yeah, I think the quarterback piece is definitely a concern for the Cardinals. I thought they were more talented on the defensive side of the ball last year, but then they regressed, and what if they're just not as talented? Will Johnson, up and down rookie season. Walter Nolan, injured. Both, Will Johnson has his injury history. What if those guys just aren't good?
Yeah. I mean, it looked like they added an absolute ton of talent to this defense, but what if actually what they added was a solid player, solid to good, in Josh Sweat, and then a talented player in Walter Nolan who's injured, and that's basically it.
Yeah, I'd say defensive tackle, linebacker, still some general questions on this team. The pass rush was okay last year. I think they could be okay this year with Josh Sweat, Zaven Collins. But, there's some depth questions there. I think depth questions all across the defensive side of the ball.
They also, by the way, so as much as it became very difficult to defend his record by the end of it, it had felt for most of his tenure that this was a very well-coached team under Jonathan Gannon. And then it kind of fell apart, and he got fired. But what if it actually was a very well-coached team, and in firing him, like, you might not have improved anything, but you might have actually made one thing that was there worse. Now, different sides of the ball, I guess. But, like, generally that had felt like a pretty well-coached football team up until last year.
Until the second half.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, everything's sort of falling apart here. But what if it actually was a very well-coached football team, and firing the coach, you haven't made things better?
Other thing I'll add, I would just say secondary overall, cornerbacks opposite Will Johnson, a little aggression from Garrett Williams in year 2, but cornerback opposite Will Johnson, specifically Sean Murphy-Bunting, Max Melton, Starling Thomas V coming back. It's not, the best bunch of options there. Denzel Burke, cornerback 2, I would say, general question for Arizona. So,
and what if Marvin Harrison Jr.'s entire draft prospect profile was fraudulent and he's just not good?
I think it's a fair reason for pessimism. He's been, I'd say, a slightly above average receiver through 2 years, which is a disappointment for
a huge disappointment relative to what he was supposed to be. I mean, we're going to be talking about Jeremiah Smith as the best wide receiver to come along since, definitely Jamar Chase, maybe as far back as Calvin Johnson. Like, Marvin Harrison Jr. was kind of talked about in that bucket. And okay, it was muddied a little bit by the fact that Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze were also in that draft. So you had this like trio of elite receiver prospects, but like, the people that were pro Marvin Harrison Jr. were like, this is the best wide receiver prospect to come along since, for a long time, particularly early in the process. Because again, he a little bit like Caleb Downs, like he'd been the guy throughout his entire college career effectively. And there's been almost no signs of that in the NFL. Whatever about average, above average, whatever, virtually no signs that player is going to exist in the NFL.
All right, let's go Los Angeles Rams. Reasons for pessimism. Were Stafford's back injuries an issue early enough last year, like through minicamp, that we were talking about it last year at this time?
It was like so
training camp. It certainly was, because he didn't start training camp for a while.
Yeah, I think I nailed that almost perfectly, which is to say that based off Stafford's history, we would be like the back thing. It would be a thing all the way through the year, but it would never affect him. Like, that's Stafford, right? It's like he's constantly hurt, but he just goes out there and balls out anyway. And it's like, it's the reason that, like, in 20 years' time, he's going to be walking like Mike Ditka, but not a reason to affect his play on the field at the moment, right? That, I feel like, is where we are with Stafford, that expecting an injury-plagued season that's actually going to cause problems is probably foolish.
Let's still throw it out there, though. Injury concerns with Matthew Stafford. Never know. He's getting older. He's another year older.
That's the one. Yeah, like that's the more concerning thing to me would be less. Can we predict an injury that might slow him down for the first time? It's more the dude's 38. At some point, decline's coming, even though he's just coming off an MVP season. Head
coach Sean McVay hates their first-round draft pick, Ty Simpson.
What if Ty Simpson causes so? Either McVay hates him,
the inverted Rodgers,
or or the reason that McVay wanted to be as negative as possible publicly, like put on is because he's Stafford's guy, right? And he knows that Stafford is mentally fragile enough that if you drafted his replacement, he would go to pieces, Carson Wentz style. So he had
the opposite of Rodgers.
Yeah, he had to protect the mental stability of Matthew Stafford by acting like he hates the guy they drafted to replace him, right? Because he knows, like Jalen Hurts, you bring in that guy, he's going to go to pieces.
So you've got Stafford's going to have to throw like 30 picks because he's pressing and trying to fight off the rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. instead of
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Rodgers reels off back-to-back MVPs, but Stafford goes the other way.
Right. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You draft the guy to put some pressure on the starter, which pressures him into falling apart completely, and then you have to turn to the backup.
Other reasons for pessimism here. Devontae Adams, another year older for him.
Yep.
And Puka Nacua, some of the stuff stacking up off the field. He's about to probably make $45 million or whatever at receiver. What if they're fragile at receiver this year?
Well, yeah. What if actually there's more to life than having 16 tight ends? And maybe you might need some wide receivers still.
Yeah, so wide receiver 3, which they might not need with all the 13 and
though they
14
did last year.
Personnel. But you might not need a wide receiver 3 unless old man Devontae Adams gets hurt.
I mean, even last year, you can genuinely argue that they didn't beat the Seahawks because they weren't able to get better play out of somebody like Kanata Mumfield.
True.
If they had, say, Mekhi Lemon instead of Kanata Mumfield, maybe they win that game. Now, you can't do that because it's a year. But the point being, you can point to a game literally a couple months ago.
Games this year, if Mekhi Lemon's tearing it up, and be like, man, the Rams could really use that guy.
But you can point to a game literally a couple of months ago where it's like that would have probably been the difference.
So I think those are the fairest concerns. I think more long-term, if we want to throw that in there, trying to figure out how to keep the offensive line intact, pay Kobe Turner, eventually pay Jared Verse. They've got a lot of – those are good problems to have, but still trying to figure out how to keep this thing intact. And the other long-term thing I'll just piggyback on from the draft is they've only drafted, 11 times over the last 2 years, and half of them have been tight ends, right? They're not necessarily in a great – seriously, a lot of their value picks have been tight ends over or backup quarterbacks out of their 11 picks. That doesn't always bode well for the future, so there's, some work to be done, I think, to make sure they're in good shape in 2027 and beyond. But for this year, I think my biggest concern is depth at receiver, and then any kind of Stafford regression, I think, is a factor.
Instead of trying to sort of pin it down to injury or age, what if you just say, look, he was the MVP last season. What if he's just good this year? That step back by itself.
He's an odd year guy too, right? 2021, awesome year with the Rams, maybe the best of his career. They win the Super Bowl. 22, they all get hurt and regress. 23, I thought he had a really sneaky good season with the youth movement there. 24, he really fell apart down the stretch. He did not play well at all. The defense ended up carrying them. And then in 25, he's got the MVP caliber season. So we're into an even season here, Sam. Maybe he's Brett Saberhagen. You know what I mean?
Sure. The point being, any form of regression from him from an MVP caliber level is a step backwards, and that's probable as opposed to trying to pin it down to does he get injured? Does he get just a year older? He's probably going to be worse this year than he was when he was the MVP.
All right, let's go San Francisco 49ers. Reasons for pessimism in San Francisco. Let me start with the pass rush. I think we put on the optimism show, if everybody stays healthy, there could be a much better group. My concern would be Nick Bosa's getting older, battled a ton of injuries, missed most of last year. Mykal Williams, last year's first rounder, never really rushed the passer effectively. He was always a bit of a projection. They bring in Osa Odighizuwa, which is great, but the rest of their defensive tackles last year, the two rookies, didn't play great, and they were just weak up front. So they might not be able to either stop the run effectively with their front four or rush the passer effectively despite some of the investment the last 2 years.
What if Son is Life 456 is onto something and the substation, it's going to be the reason that they're never healthy?
It's true. Substation.
George Kittle's injured already, Okay, it happened last year, but whatever. George Kittle's hurt. You got all these guys coming back from injury, but the substation's not going to let him be healthy.
Mike Evans hamstring.
Mike Evans with his was already with bandy hamstrings. Now you're putting him next to a substation. It's just it can't work.
All fair questions, Sam. Let's see. Beyond that,
Christian McCaffrey's out here like bear crawling, trying to improve his range of mobility, but 1 second next to the substation, and you're going to rip a labrum or whatever.
All their best players getting hurt last year. It's a reason for optimism and also a reason for are they injury prone? Is it going to happen again? Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, George Kittle, whoever. The other thing I'd say, secondary, been up and down the last couple of years. And I would just say high level, they haven't been the best drafting team. I think the one above average player they've brought in the last 4 drafts is Dominic Pooney at right guard. And at some point that catches up to you. And the roster is all, and look, it's very impressive what they did. I know a lot of the good coaches, you get into the season and you're like, is this the best job? Is this the best job this guy's ever done? And you could say that about Kyle Shanahan last year. In previous years, you're like, yeah, he's got all of his tools. But the last year, they had injuries on both sides of the ball. Defense was falling apart, and they were still
Tin Cup year again.
Tin Cup year. And Kyle Shanahan's a great coach. But at some point, does that run out? Because they're another year removed from having Debo in his prime and Ayuk, and they had a loaded defensive line when they went to the Super Bowl in 2023. Like, a lot of the things that they had 3 or 4 years ago look much worse. And I don't know if they've replenished youth-wise to build it back up again. And just look, like, Kittle's another year older. Evans is generally old. And I don't want to say injury-prone, but he gets nicked up a lot. Last year he had a significant injury. He gets nicked up along the way. Fred Warner injured last year. Nick Bosa injured last year. Like, some of the stars are getting older here.
Yeah.
And if you take those guys away, it's not a great roster.
No, and we saw that last year. Now, okay, they won a lot of games in spite of that, but that roster looked awful for a lot of last year, particularly on defense. Like, they took away the 2 star players. Like, this time a year ago, we were saying this defense it's good, but it's really leaning on stars and scrubs, right? And then all of the stars got hurt.
And listen,
well, now you're just a defensive scrubs.
If you're a Niners fan right here, you're like, wait, we went to the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying.
Beat the Eagles. Yeah, I thought the coaching staff did an incredible job. Sal is out, Raheem Morris is in, fine. But if the goal is to get back to your Super Bowl days, it looks like a lesser roster now than certainly it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, and then the other thing is they haven't been a good drafting team, and I don't think they've been particularly good at cutting bait quickly when they've drafted badly. Like, I think they tend to cling on to players that they've drafted thinking, no, we were right. Like, it just hasn't come good yet. And then the guy never comes good because he's just not a good player. And I think they take longer to move on from some of those mistakes than other teams do, which doesn't help. Like, a guy, Jair Brown, still being in the starting lineup, I think, would not happen for a lot of teams at this point already. Like, the kicker that was awful from start to finish, the amount of time it took for them to get rid of that guy is remarkable.
Jake Moody.
Given how bad he was. I think that's a trend for this team as well. So not only are they not drafting particularly well, but I think that they are compounding not drafting well by not recognizing that quickly enough and throwing good money after bad.
All right, let's go Seattle Seahawks, rounding out the NFC West. Reasons for pessimism for the defending Super Bowl champions.
They did lose some significant pieces after winning that Super Bowl.
They did. So
including Super Bowl MVP.
Super Bowl MVP Ken Walker, Boye Mafe on the defensive line, Reek Woolen at corner. I would say the defensive line depth, I don't know if they replenished that with Mafe leaving. Dante Fowler is going to come in. I don't know if that's like for like. It's not bad, but
right.
Maybe some defensive line depth. You're relying on rookie Jadarian Price to essentially replace Ken Walker with Zach Charbonnet coming off of his injury. So I'd say the running back position and depth generally. I know they won a Super Bowl with Anthony Bradford at right guard, but he's still slotted in at right guard.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see if he can.
Still a weakness.
Yeah, it's still a weakness for the team. And are we past the point where we say Sam Darnold regression? Or
yeah, it's probably unreasonable to at this point, given how good he's been for how long.
So good.
You know, it's one thing when it's like 8 games of good performance. You can, I think, realistically ask the question. But at this point, I think it would be pretty spiteful to be like, maybe Darnold's only ever a game away from going back into a pumpkin.
The only thing I'll point out is you throw him in that, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, rejuvenation bucket. And I think you could easily argue that Darnold's highs have been higher than what Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield have had. But they've also, those two in particular, have had their ups and downs and regression points and everything. So it's not like it's out of the realm of possibility, but I'll be kind and not listed here. I think Darnold's been outstanding the last 2 years.
If you were looking
outside of like 3 games, basically, 2 against the Rams and the other, or all against the Rams.
If you were looking for
Lions game,
any sort of shred of negativity in that general area, you would point, I think, to Kubiak leaving as opposed to Darnold regressing.
Yeah, that's fair.
Now they're sort of staying within that system in terms of the coach, Brian Fleury. But you are theoretically, that probably is on the face of it, a downgrade at that important coaching position.
All right, going to the AFC West. Reasons for pessimism, starting with the Denver Broncos. Reasons for pessimism for Denver. I would say, because we've been very optimistic about the Broncos because, this time of year, stacking rosters, you're looking at the two deep, and it's like it's really good. The pessimism for me is just general. It's tough to be as good as they were last year. I thought the defense, I don't want to say wilted or whatever, but they regressed a little bit down the stretch. And it's just they're in a competitive division. It's going to be really tough to repeat as division champions here.
Yeah,
that's part of it.
They're in a really tough spot in terms of picking major holes because that roster looks very good almost across the board. It's hard to find an area where you would say that's probably going to be a weakness. There's a couple of spots where like maybe. And they don't even have the inbuilt thing of like the kind of jokey stuff we were doing with the Rams where it's like, Stafford's going to be sad. Like, Stafford will probably regress from being the MVP of the league. There's no real reason to think that Bo Nix will be any worse this year than he was a year ago. His injury is not expected to be, a long-term thing. It was an injury that was probably going to happen at some point, apparently, based off the reports, but it happened. He had the surgery. He should be good to go, at which point he's probably not going to get worse. You added Jalen Waddle to his wide receiver core. That should be better. It's hard to find a reason where that offense wouldn't be as good, if not better, this year than it was a year ago. So they're a really tough team to find any kind of negative about.
Probably tight end if you're nitpicking. Evan Ingram is okay at this point in his career. They didn't necessarily address it. Him and Adam Troutman as the 1-2 punch there. Justin Jolly did get drafted. He might be able to add a little bit as a pass catcher. But, yeah, it is nitpicking a little bit.
And that might be the weakest spot in the roster, and it's fine.
Yeah. And then you lose John Franklin Myers on the defensive line.
Yeah.
You draft Tyler and Yedem. I don't know if he's a like-for-like replacement. Maybe the defensive line took a little bit of a depth hit. But across
was one of the best units in the NFL last year. Yeah.
Right, and they were very good. The two things I would mention for pessimism maybe showed some weakness on the defensive side of the ball against better offenses in the second half of the season last year. And generally, the Chiefs are probably going to bounce back. The Chargers are good. The AFC's good. It's just tough to repeat where you were. And can you rely on this defense to be as good as they've been another year in a row? Because the last 3 years they've been outstanding. Really, since they gave up 70 to the Dolphins.
Since they gave up an almost record.
Since the middle of the 2023 season.
It's crazy how short a time that was ago.
So the middle of 2023, they were a historically bad defense. And since that point, they've been one of the league's best.
Right. A Miami historically good offense looking like they were great.
Right. So things change, man. Things change. But, the last 2.5 years, this defense has been great. Can they keep it up? But, you're kind of like nitpicking some of the flaws. The other reason for pessimism, like hot button, no Bo Nix. Just, can't say anything nice or negative about him. But you probably put him behind Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert in that division, right? I'm just saying.
Feels fair.
You probably would if you were ranking quarterbacks in that division. And while Bo Nix has been very impressive to me in some big games, in crunch time, he's made a ton of big throws, say, against the Chiefs when he's going head-to-head against Mahomes or, in the playoffs against the Bills the last couple of years. He's made some big plays.
Yeah.
And he deserves credit for that. But ultimately, he's still probably the third best quarterback. He is the third best quarterback in that division. So, it makes it harder to keep that up.
He still has a very weird profile in terms of just, what he is, describing him, kind of articulating the type of player that he is at this level. Like he's been very inconsistent, but a lot of good. He's made a ton of big plays. He's also averaged like 6.5 yards per attempt for his entire career, which is not a good number. He's just got a very strange statistical and overall profile of a player. It's unusual.
The accuracy comes and goes, and I think if you're a detractor, you're like, oh, the footwork's a mess, and he's missing all these easy throws. But if you're a fan, you remember a lot of they were the team that had all the fourth quarter magic last year too.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's all noise. I think there's something to that because I think a lot of the stretches where the 6.5 yards per attempt happen because they are kind of conservative. And then when you kind of let Bo go in the fourth quarter, he does do a lot of good stuff. But on the pessimistic side, it is very difficult to always do that. And, if you don't make 2 or 3 of those fourth quarter comebacks, all of a sudden you're just a 10-win team and you're a wild card team, right? And so that would be the pessimism piece would be, is Bo capable of that? Sure. Can he always however many fourth quarter comebacks they had last year. Can he do that again? It's tough to replicate.
But like also everything is sort of comes and goes with him. Like he had so last season you had a ton of games where he had no big time throws. You had a ton of games where he had like 4 or more big time throws, which is a pretty good number. The same thing is true for turnover worthy plays, right? You have a ton of games where he didn't have any effectively perfect game in terms of putting the ball in major harm. And then he had a ton of games where he had like 4 or more again. It's like, so that he's wildly inconsistent in terms of whether you're going to get big plays, no big plays, big catastrophe plays, no big catastrophe plays.
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, but also you've got that, like he's been extremely difficult to sack as well. He's one of the better in the NFL in terms of the pressure to sack rate stuff. Like he's just, there are very few quarterbacks in the NFL, I think, that have a more confusing profile than what Bo Nix has shown through the first couple of years in the NFL. And that's why I think he's such a hot button topic, because no matter what you want to argue, there's a data point that can back you up. If you want to argue that he's garbage, there's all these 4 turnover-worthy play games and the 6.5 yards per attempt and blah, blah. You could put together a pretty strong statistical argument that says Bo Nix sucks. But if you could also go the other way and say, if you want to make it out like he's the next whatever, you can put together an argument that says, like, Bo Nix is just money.
He started, every regular season game his first 2 years. He only got hurt in the playoffs.
Right.
Both 17-game schedules and a 4-touchdown game against Kansas City's backup. So his total touchdown numbers are,
Yeah, like there's stats out there that make it look like
through 2 years.
Yeah, he belongs up there with the kind of game, or the Drake May, and no matter what you want to argue with Bo Nix, there's stats to back it up, and you put all those stats together, and they work in direct opposition. So therefore, it's if you actually are interested in the truth as opposed to just the agenda that you're pushing, it's very difficult to actually figure out what he is.
All right, let's go Kansas City Chiefs. Reasons for pessimism in Kansas City coming off of their worst season of the Mahomes-Reed era.
Yeah, well, last year showed that they're capable of actually not being a good team. What if, as long as they have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, they'll always be contenders. Well, last year showed that's not true.
Until they're not.
They won 6 games last year, right? So actually, with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, turns out they're capable of being below average.
They're going to start in Denver, by the way, or against Denver, I think at home, on Monday Night Football, which was curious to me because I think Mahomes is going to play. Given the timing of his injury, he always felt like as long as there wasn't a setback from a recovery standpoint that he was going to be back for week 1. But you're still coming off of an ACL. Mm-hmm. And so that's a reason for pessimism this year. Mahomes coming off of injury, even if it just takes him a few weeks.
And last year, remember, he started the season playing the way he typically plays in the playoffs, where it's like, I have to make all these plays on the ground, scrambling, because nobody else is going to make them. Like, I need to carry the team from week 1, not from week 17.
And they've made no changes on offense. There are no new additions on offense other than the running back position, Ken Walker. No pass game changes on offense. And so offensive line's back intact. But, I thought Josh Simmons was fine as a rookie. He dealt with some off-field plus some injuries. Jalen Moore is going to be the starting right tackle. You lose Juwan Taylor. But it's pretty much the same receiving core, and Travis Kelce back at tight end, right? Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Tyquan Thornton coming back. So it's the same group pretty much. So a reason for concern would be the offense was not good last year, even when Mahomes was before he got injured. And they're rolling it back. And so they just banking on we're going to coach it up better, or we're going to become more of a run-first team with Ken Walker. I'm not seeing that necessarily.
And, some of the biggest moves you made in the offseason were patching up a hole that didn't exist before the offseason started. Like, we ran into the offseason. It's like, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to build the offensive line back? Are they going to go find receivers? Are they going to replace Travis Kelce? Blah, blah, blah. And actually, the first thing they did is trade away their best defensive player, arguably,
right,
in Trent McDuffie. Second best, if you want to put Chris Jones as the number 1 guy. But they opened up a yawning chasm of a hole that didn't exist before the season finished, right? So you took a team that won 6 games and made it significantly worse by trading away one of their top 2 defensive players. And okay, he then did a good job rebuilding that by bringing in Mansour Delay in the draft, et cetera. But the point being, if you're looking relative to a year ago when they won 6 games, you're like, are they even better based off that? Probably not.
So youth movement in the secondary, youth movement on the defensive line. You've got Chris Jones, he would still have those dominant rushes last year. He would still have maybe one or two plays
That's
a
the
game.
worst year he's had for a long time.
Yeah, he would still have one or two plays a game where it's like an instant win. He would blow up a play, but the worst year he's had in a while. So I think there's still some defensive concerns and reasons for pessimism. And
I mean, in a nutshell, it was a 6-win team a year ago. It's not obviously better on paper than it was heading into last year. And the quarterback that was the reason that they would always be a contender is coming off an ACL.
Yes.
I mean, none of those are reasons for anything other than pessimism.
Well said. All right, let's go Las Vegas Raiders. Reasons for pessimism for the Raiders.
What if all the sort of focus on why Fernando Mendoza was the number one pick, the top quarterback in the draft, what if he got too much of a pass for his negatives?
RPO offense and
RPO offense, just doesn't necessarily
NFL throws.
go through NFL reads the way other quarterbacks do. Not enough NFL concepts, tendency to bail out of pockets backwards, get himself into trouble that way. Pretty bad sack rate, pressure to sack rate, general troubling relationship with pressure, and a level of athleticism that works well in a straight line, but not necessarily in a make you miss escapability kind of way.
I think that's fair.
Like we focus, and some of those are mental traits. And he got such a pass for the mental trait stuff because, but look at him, he's a maniac. He's LinkedIn. He's all about the business. He's turning down trips to the White House already because he's at minicamp or whatever, right? What if that doesn't matter? Just because you work hard at it doesn't mean you're going to be good at it.
He turned down the Manning Passing Academy last year because they had practice.
Really?
I believe it was Signetti's urging. But I think, it's his final decision to turn down the passing academy to work out with his teammates.
I feel like a real number one overall guy would have found a way to make them both work.
You got the NIL
the Manning
money,
Academy is an important thing in a quarterback's development. You're telling me
maybe it's not. He was the number one pick.
Telling me you can afford development. I didn't say it's going to harm your status.
Oh, I see.
But maybe that's why he's going to suck. Didn't go to the Manning Academy.
Arch
you don't
Manning,
know what.
You would think Arch Manning's mechanics would be a little bit better.
I showed you a clip.
Manning.
Peyton Manning talked about his quarterback rating dropping under 100, and that shaped Kirk Cousins for about 8 years. Your 5 minutes in the Manning Academy might have completely transformed the way Mendoza went about the game.
But maybe negatively. He would have been conservative Fernando.
Maybe.
Throw check down Fernando or something.
Anyway, I think it's a real thing though that he did get a serious pass based off his sort of personality profile that may not be reasonable.
Yeah. I would say so obviously that's we're just naming what's in the range of outcomes here as potential pessimism. I would say the receiving core. I say this a lot. If you took one of Josh Allen, Mahomes, or Lamar Jackson, if you gave them whatever receiving core, it'd be like a big story. But because it's a rookie, you don't think about it as much. But if you gave them Trey Tucker, who's coming off a really nice season, Jalen Naylor, highest paid receiver on the team.
Yeah.
Dante Thornton Jr., Jack Besh, who kind of disappointed as a second-round rookie last year. I mean, that's the receiving core, beyond Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
So I think that's a concern. You've got one really good weapon in Bowers and then a bunch of okay weapons. Michael Mayer at the other tight end, Jalen Naylor, Trey Tucker. That's a concern for year one, I would say, for Fernando Mendoza. O-line, I think, should be better, but it's still not, questions that may be right. What Jackson Powers Johnson is, right tackle.
Pessimism show. They may still only have 2 offensive linemen.
Good job.
I mean, so remember.
And everybody defensively. They pissed off Max this offseason.
Right. He's upset. He's not going to play hard for them anymore. This time a year ago, we weren't expecting that offensive line to be cheeks. That offensive line was okay on paper last year. And we were like, well, they still wouldn't have drafted Genti that high necessarily, but maybe that offensive line. And then the offensive line was absolute garbage start to finish. And it's like, okay, Genti looks terrible.
Colton Miller was there.
Right.
Dylan Parham was there.
And
Jackson Powers Johnson was there. It looked like 3 starters who were reasonable, average or better.
People were talking up DJ Glaze then.
And Glaze was could have been a league average right tackle, which he was.
So there was, that offensive line was somewhere in the middle, and the optimistic side was it could be okay, and then but it wasn't supposed to be absolute garbage, and it ended up being. So as much as it looks better right now on paper. I mean, it might not be. It might just be 2/5 of an offensive line still with Colt Miller and Tyler Linderbaum, and actually the other 3/5 may still be terrible. So again, it's the pessimism show. That offensive line could still be a problem.
Garbage. I still have a lot of questions about the defense.
Yeah, reasonably so.
Yeah. Pass rushers beyond Max Crosby. If they did not have Max Crosby, I don't know. I don't know what they would have drafted with that 14th pick. But
an edge rusher, presumably.
They need pass rushers. I think defensive tackle is a big concern. I think the secondary is a big concern. So I think there's concerns at every level. They invested a lot at linebacker, but one of those was Quay Walker.
And Nakobe Dean's been hurt a lot.
Nakobe Dean's been hurt a lot.
Yeah.
So, there's still a lot of concerns, I would say, for the Raiders.
Yeah, that defense across the board does not look good on paper. Jamad McCoy, major injury concern, knee injury, may never be a good player.
Let's go Los Angeles Chargers. Reasons for pessimism.
They didn't draft Emmanuel Pregnon.
That's fine. The question is, did they do enough at guard between Jake Slaughter,
just the offensive line, right? Like, you've got, Joe Alt coming back, should be healthy, should be an elite right tackle. Rashawn Slater's coming back off a much more concerning injury and might not be the player that he was before going out. Like, the history of guys to come back from that kind of injury has not been particularly good. Now, complicating that is Simmons last year for the Chiefs, who looked pretty good right off the gate coming off that injury. So the most recent one to come back from that injury has come back and looked pretty good. But the general history of players coming back from that patella injury is not good. So I wouldn't be, you can't necessarily just assume Rashawn Slater's a Pro Bowler still. Biadasz is fine, but no better than fine. Both guards look problematic. If Jake Slaughter is a guard, that's its own question mark as a draft pick. And so your offensive line, again, for a team that was so acutely destroyed by the offensive line last season, did they go that hard to fix it? Not necessarily.
I think those are all fair questions. What if Justin Herbert's MVP vote goes to his head?
Or what if he's just a coach killer?
What if it's all his fault?
What if Justin Herbert is just a mild-mannered Jay Cutler?
You would want to get your vote back.
There are people out there that believe that Justin Herbert, he's a fraud. He's only ever this guy that flatters to deceive and never puts it together, never shows it. It's only ever glimpses.
There's enough opinions out there because I say this about every quarterback, real hot button. You can get any opinions or whatever. I think Herbert's somewhere in between. Like I don't think Justin Herbert has been as good as Joe Burrow.
Right.
But there's plenty of people who are like, well, he makes these throws that Burrow can't make, which is like, fine, that's not the job description. But
by the way, I was closer to arguing that this time a year ago than not. Like I would have been on the side of maybe he is kind of more. Maybe he will always flatter to deceive, and he's never actually going to put it all together. But then I think he did for the first half of last season until the offensive line became 5 versions of you trying to block for him. And it's like, well, at that point, no shot. But I actually think he did put it together in a way that people said he's never done.
My point is, I think Burrow's better than Herbert.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean, like, in perpetuity, Burrow will always have a better season. Like,
right.
That's not how quarterback play is. But I don't think Herbert's down in, like, QB 15 range. And people want to say, well, he's a top 3 most talented quarterback. He's like, talent doesn't actually matter at the NFL level. Performance does.
Yeah.
But his talent shows up in his performance. But you try to get that more often. But he's not QB 15 coach killer either. He's probably a top 5 or 6 quarterback in the NFL. And, one of these years puts it all together.
But this is the funny thing about, again, because we're in this world where statistics can be used to prove everything and everyone does have statistics on everything.
Just use the playoff stats.
But like Bryce Young, right? Like we've talked about how there was that half year where Bryce Young's stats didn't mesh with his play, right? And if you look at his PFF grading for that half year, it's like way higher than his statistical profile. But if you forward a few years, everyone forgets that context, and you just look at the stats. You're like, well, he's just been mid always. You're like, yeah, but there was an 8-game period where he wasn't, but the stats don't back you up on that, right? Unless you go unless you go to PFF grade and big time throw rate or whatever. Like the basic stats that everyone uses will just look the same, and everyone forgets that kind of context. So Herbert, like last year, if you just use the whole year, the stats will all look just mid again, right? So if people want to construct this argument that Justin Herbert has never shown it in the NFL, he's only ever been, this flatter to deceive fraud, last year's stats will back that argument up, even though I would argue for the first half of the year, he absolutely showed that, put it all together. but then his offensive line completely fell apart, and by the end of it, the statistics regressed, and he didn't look like that.
Yeah, it didn't look great.
People always forget the context behind the numbers, and you just end up with this statistical profile that gets bastardized to make whatever argument people want to make.
Other reasons for pessimism, I would say defensive side of the ball, you lose Jesse Minter, a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Chris O'Leary is going to take over there, and inexperienced defensive coordinator. So general concern there.
Losing unquestionably one of the best, who had that defense cooking. That has to be a concern.
And I think if to Jesse, there's a reason why Jesse Minter is a head coach. You stack the talent on the defensive side of the ball for the Chargers. It doesn't look great. I mean, it's like mid to late round picks, Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart as starting corners. They're okay out there, but they made the sum of the parts was better than the parts, I would say.
Yeah.
And I think Minter deserves a lot of that credit. I think there's some good parts there, but it's you're not stacking that against the best defensive depth charts in the league and saying, yeah, I'll take the Chargers. So we'll see if they can keep that going.
What if Akeem Mesidor is only capable of beating up teenagers?
That's a good. We haven't gone into that negative spirit enough in this show here.
Oh, you're 27? Well, I'm screwed then.
Where are we now? That's it for the West. Let's wrap up to the Norths here. Two more divisions. NFC North, Chicago Bears. Reasons for pessimism for the Chicago Bears. I will start with the defensive line.
Okay.
No real offseason moves on the D-line that struggled mightily
Which a lot of people expected.
Yeah, they struggled in the run game, and I don't think they have a great group of pass rushers. So that's my first big concern here with the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting defensive line because them and the Falcons a few years ago had like the worst defensive lines in the game for a while. And then the Bears went and made the Montez Sweat move, and that was the big swing they took. They then drafted a bunch of guys as well, but the Montez Sweat was the big swing, and he instantly took them from being like the worst pass rush in the NFL to being okay single-handedly. Unfortunately, it has sort of remained single-handedly. Like, he's still basically the one impact player they have.
I love Montez Sweat. I think he's a really good player. I would just rather have a better pass rusher or more dynamic pass rusher opposite him.
Like, neither of the defensive tackles they drafted have made a major impact. Dexter, I think, is reasonable to have on the roster, but has not been an impact playmaker for them. Austin Booker has shown flashes. Can he take that step forward? They drafted a South African rugby player, so maybe he'll be the answer.
There it is.
But it is still basically Montez Sweat and a bunch of guys that by themselves would constitute the worst defensive line in the NFL.
So I'd say D-line would be a concern.
Kentavious Street still hanging onto our roster.
We're going to do the show because Raheem Nunez-Roches is still in the NFL. We're going to just do a show.
But Street's one of those guys where it's like at the time, he was undrafted, was he? Or 7th-round pick? Something. But then immediately, tore his ACL for a guy that was already like a wildly undersized, weird body type defensive lineman. You're like, that guy's got no shot. And then somehow from that position has clung on to various rosters for the better part of a decade.
Since 2019. He's had more than 500 snaps once. That's what we need is players who they usually average 300 snaps per season.
Right.
7 years in the league. And just list all those players. And, they're all still in the league. My other concern would be, okay, so we know left tackle is going to be a bit of a question.
Yeah.
And it's weird because we wouldn't have said Braxton Jones was really a question last year, but clearly, feels to have maybe peaked as a rookie when he was.
They clearly don't like him.
Yeah. So Braxton Jones at left tackle, and now with Drew Dahlman retiring, Garrett Bradbury was their Band-Aid at center. They also draft Logan Jones in the second round. I know people like Jones. I've got some concerns about his play strength and his ability to maybe hit the ground running immediately in the
Garrett
NFL.
Bradbury.
A lot like Bradbury. There's a lot of similarities actually to their games.
Yeah.
Except Bradbury is probably even a better college player. So I'd say center's a concern. Left tackle's a question.
I mean, you could construct a world where that offensive line falls apart quite quickly. Garrett Bradbury is not really a high end. He's a problem at times. Logan Jones may end up being just a worse version of Garrett Bradbury. Who knows? Jonah Jackson has a fairly extensive injury history in his past. Had a good season last year as a reclamation project, but it's if he gets hurt again, that would be an immediate problem at that spot. And then Braxton Jones, who the team themselves doesn't really like at left tackle, but they're stuck with until Ozzie Trapillo comes back healthy, or they have to turn to Jedrick Wills off his recovery sabbatical, time out of the NFL. I mean, very quickly, 3/5 of that offensive line could turn into problems for a team whose offense, Ben Johnson, has never really dealt with a bad offensive line. Like, remember,
It's true.
Lions was great, and immediately the first thing he did in arriving in Chicago was like, overhaul this offensive line. I have no interest in finding out whether this works with a bad line or not. Okay, he's done a lot to this offensive line, but it's still, I think, reasonably fragile where that could suddenly become a problem. And then we don't know what happens to this offense because we've never seen it.
Last thing I'll add is just Caleb Williams' throw-for-throw consistency. Like if he took a huge step forward this year, I wouldn't be surprised. But if the throw-for-throw accuracy, like overthrowing dig routes and just missing more throws than you should, if that continues, it's a bit of a concern. Like that hinders his ability to hit his ceiling.
Yeah.
And when I talk ceiling, it's interesting because I think you've seen incredible high-end throws from Caleb Williams in crunch time, the game winner against the Packers. I mean, just some incredible throws. But he hits his ceiling if he does what Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes have done, and that's hit more of the gimmies. And I think that's probably the biggest difference between him and the high-end quarterbacks is not hitting enough gimmies. And we talked on the optimism show. Hey, it's year 2. Hopefully, if he's more comfortable with that, footwork, tidy it up, you'll hit those throws. But if that still becomes an issue, and he's just a guy that, when you in the fourth quarter when the game's on the line and he's just playing free and easy and he makes these special throws, that's fine. But I think you're leaving a lot of meat on the bone if he doesn't start hitting a few more throws.
And then they're another team that opted into removing a weapon at receiver. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing.
I was going to list that, but they bring in Khalif Raymond, so they're fine.
Okay. I would just say, Roma Dunze has maybe not hit the ceiling that people expected him to hit. He sort of split the difference, I guess, between Malik Neighbors, who's been good, Marvin Harrison Jr., who's been disappointing. Roma Dunze has probably been between the two of them as that trio. So he's not necessarily shown that he's going to be that number one superstar wide receiver. Luther Burden, there's a ton of excitement about him. We talked about him in the Optimism show. But he only had 53 catches last year. Like, it's not like, you know for sure that Luther Burden's going to come in, catch 100 balls next year and just be this dominant force. So it's a risk trading away a DJ Moore. Like, you were phasing him out anyway. It makes sense. It's probably the right strategic move. Doesn't mean it won't make you worse in the short term.
All right, let's go Detroit Lions now. Reasons for pessimism.
I kind of like the Chiefs last year. Like, it turns out they're capable of just not being that good.
Yeah, my optimism piece was that the foundation is still really strong. My pessimism is that I think the depth has been chipped away at the last couple of years.
Yeah.
The offensive line, certainly, the Frank Ragnow retirement and non-comeback, I think, hurt.
Yeah.
Cade Mays will be the Band-Aid at center, relying on a rookie right tackle in Blake Miller. So it just Christian Mahogany at left guard, it's just not the same.
I mean, it's a line. Yeah, it's a line that, again, fell apart pretty quickly. Like, it went from being a top 2 unit in the NFL for a couple of years to all of a sudden we've got multiple problem spots we're trying to slap Band-Aids on.
Tate Ratledge was fine as a rookie. Penei Sewell's elite. Yeah. But 2 years ago, you're talking about a line where Graham Glasgow was like the biggest question, like the weakness on the line, where he would be probably the third. I don't know if he's third best on the line now, but
him then would have been like, that's like, he's gotten worse and he's no longer on.
Right, but I'm saying
but
like him then,
year,
he's probably the third best lineman, other than like we don't know what Blake Miller's going to do.
Yeah, it's at least a question. Whereas then, like he was definitely the weakest link on that offensive line, which made it 1 or 2 in terms of offensive lines in the NFL. Now you're like, left guard might be weak, center might be weak, right tackle might be weak, depending on what a rookie Blake Miller does. If all 3 are, that's 3/5 of your line is in trouble. And that's back where we were with the Raiders. Like, that could be an issue.
You lose David Montgomery, bring in Isaiah Pacheco, similar
Feels
running
like
style. It's still like a power type of player, but Montgomery's a better player.
Much better. And Pacheco's not coming off a good year either. So that probably is a significant downgrade.
And edge 2. Edge 2. Derek Moore, they traded up to get him in the second round. Very good player out of Michigan. But that's a rookie. I don't know if he's necessarily solving that problem in year 1. So you've got Derek Moore battling with DJ Wanham and Peyton Turner, and Al-Qadim Muhammad's gone. I just don't know if you've got that solved right now.
And I think you probably also the secondary was all hurt last year, but cornerback is still pretty unproven in this system now. The only good corner from a year ago was Amik Robertson. He's not there anymore. DJ Reed, we know, is capable of better play than we've seen from him. We don't know that's true for Terry and Arnold, the former first-round pick. The slot now is a new spot that needs to be sorted between Christian Izien, Roger McCreary, Rakestraw. There's still, the other guy that was drafted behind Terry and Arnold. There's still a question of where he fits. I mean, they might not have corners that can hold up still. We don't know exactly where that is. And Alex Anzalone, who's been a big part of that defense, isn't there anymore. So another linebacker needs to step up.
All of that adds up to my reasons for pessimism. We were
Right.
we went to training camp, 3 years ago now? And we were like, wow, look at this roster. That was right before they broke out, 2023. They go and win week 1 against the Chiefs and go all the way. They went to the NFC Championship that year. 2024, it ends in that disappointing divisional loss. But you could easily argue that the Lions are a top 3 team in the league in 24. Last year, they took a step back, and it's coincided with the depth chart, I believe. Which I think is funny. Like I was talking about the Chargers earlier, and I said the depth chart doesn't look great, but they've played excellent on defense. I think the Lions, the reason for pessimism is their success has directly correlated with what the depth chart looks like, and it's just taken some hits when it comes to losing some starters, maybe not directly replacing them, and there's far more question marks now, I think, than there were just 2 years ago on this team.
Agreed. Yeah, it's the roster overall is it's not in as good a spot as it was a couple years ago. It doesn't mean they can't get back there. But,
Right.
It's the cycles of drafting, right? When you nail a draft, suddenly your roster looks amazing because generally teams use those draft picks to kind of fill in depth largely. Like obviously the top player or two is scheduled to come in and start, but everyone else is basically just landing on the depth chart somewhere. But if you hit on 5 or 6 of them, suddenly the depth looks amazing because the guys that were supposed to be starting are now down as depth pieces, and it's like, wow, this thing's loaded. But then you have a draft where you don't do that, and it immediately falls apart.
Now you got to start paying the guys
That
from
too,
3 years ago, and you don't have the same kind of depth. All right, let's go Green Bay Packers. Reasons for pessimism for the Green Bay Packers.
Well, we saw last year that even with a big swing and Micah Parsons coming in for 2 first-round picks, didn't make any difference. They're still just good, not great.
They were they had a chance to be very good. I mean, they looked outstanding early on.
Is that because Micah Parsons got hurt? Who can say?
No, but they had come back down to the pack a little bit even before that. I guess, so our optimism answer was all their best players got hurt last year, besides the quarterback.
They're coming back.
The pessimism would be, despite the move to go get Micah Parsons and not having a first-round pick this year and not having one next year now, they're still not over the hump and, one of the best teams in the NFC. They're still not there yet.
It would be more that you can basically say this team is dependent on 2 players.
Yeah.
Okay, even if you want to make the argument that Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft turn this team from good into a Super Bowl contender, well, that means that if either one of those guys gets hurt, you're in trouble.
But I was saying the opposite last year, where they're just good all around, and they're not great anywhere. You're saying that's all flipped now?
No, I'm saying that that's true, but they go from one to the other with those 2 players. I think this is a good team, come what may, but it's good across the board, and then they have 2 potential superstars, Micah Parsons on the defensive side and Tucker Kraft on the offensive side. And apparently those 2 guys are important enough that if either one of them goes down, they're basically not capable of winning a Super Bowl anymore. They still remain a good team and probably a playoff team, but those 2 players transform them from can you win a championship to forget about it.
Yeah. I would say beyond that, I would say the offensive line, in Green Bay never looks great on paper, but they lose Rasheed Walker and expecting probably Jordan Morgan to step in at left tackle. Again, they don't look great on paper beyond Zach Tom at right tackle. You take a little bit of a wide receiver depth hit with Romeo Doubs out, and so Matthew Golden, a little bit more pressure on the former first rounder.
What if he just sucks?
Not bad.
I mean, look, he's got his rookie season was statistically one of the worst that you ever see.
Based on what?
Based on base, yeah. I mean, look at his numbers. Stack his numbers up against first round wide receivers over the last 20 years. It's bad. It's a list of bad players, and Matthew Golden. Now, I think you look pretty good on tape. I would expect
he stepped in as in a loaded receiving core, though.
But the point, loaded. I mean, it's a group that you're like, oh, thank God they finally drafted a
not
first
loaded,
round wide receiver.
Yeah.
Point being, the list of players that have come out of that type of rookie season and been good is very small.
No, I understand.
So Sure, can he be the one that bucks the trend? But this is the pessimism show. So what if he's just another on that list of garbage wide receivers?
Defensively, you take a little bit of a hit. Rashawn Gary out. I still don't really trust. I don't trust their defensive tackles holding up in the run game. They got smoked by the Ravens, and there still remains these games where they just get overpowered and overmatched in the run game. And I don't think they've done anything at defensive tackle to necessarily fix that. And I would say at corner, Keyshawn Nixon, they draft Brandon Cece, Benjamin St. Juste, and Carrington Valentine. Is that a good enough group to, give you more coverage flexibility, play more man coverage? I don't know if they're there yet. So those are my concerns with the Packers. Never vibe with the Packers, and they're always good. So,
well, I think one of the big things is that offensive line where LaFleur, I think we don't tend to buck it in, but probably needs to in that world of McDaniel and Shanahan, where they always hide the offensive line. Like it always looks concerning on paper, and it never is. Like LaFleur probably needs to be in that bucket as well, where the Packers just keep drafting these college tackles, kicking them into every other offensive line spot. And then on paper, you're like, man, that doesn't look like a great group.
They make it work,
It's always fine.
They do make it work. All right, rounding out the North with the NFC North. Minnesota Vikings, reasons for pessimism for the Vikings.
The same.
Go ahead, Sam.
No quarterback that short is going to be a high-level player at the NFL level.
Kyler Murray battling J.J. McCarthy. It's going to be a real competition for the starting spot.
No, it's not. Are they even saying that?
I think so. I would say that.
There's a list of kind of comedy propaganda Twitter accounts that are out there trying to stand for J.J. McCarthy, and it's like, look.
Those are jokes, right?
No, they're real. They're like serious, like subsect of psychopath. I'm okay with the idea that writing the man off completely at this point in his career is maybe a little bit too far, but he can't start this year, unless Kyler Murray gets injured.
No, Kyler's in there for a reason. The concern, I'd say the concern would be, okay.
A reason beyond being paid like $7.50.
Yeah, that's true.
Start for them.
Kyler, if he doesn't mesh with Kevin O'Connell and you waste what looks like a great trio of receivers with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Juwan Jennings, plus the tight ends to throw to.
Kyler's an enigmatic quarterback. What if that simply means a guy that is impossible to craft a high-level NFL offense around?
So that's a fair concern, specifically center with Ryan Kelly retiring and maybe not a direct replacement, Blake Brandel. Perhaps replacing him, Michael Juergens, whoever ends up, center's a question. There's a lot of center question marks around the NFL. Golden age for center question marks in the NFL. Replacing Jonathan Grenard, giving Dallas Turner even if Dallas Turner is very good, Turner was your 3 last year. Like he goes from being a very good number 3 rusher to now he's your 1/2 with Van Ginkel, and you take some depth.
Almost certainly a downgrade.
A depth hit.
Jonathan Grenard is a very good player. They traded him away effectively for salary cap reasons. So they almost certainly get worse on the edge because of that.
You lose.
What if Caleb Banks and his broken feet are just going to be a problem permanently?
Harrison Smith gone at safety.
The general for the defense. And they didn't replace him with Dylan Thieneman. How can you expect that to work?
With Thieneman.
And with Banks, not even feet, it's 1 foot. What if he's broken 1 foot, I think, 4 times now in the space of like a year and a half at 330 pounds with freakish, quick twitch power. Like, what if that's a permanent problem?
Powerful.
He's too powerful for his left foot.
That's all it is. And I'd say corner, Isaiah Rodgers had a really nice season. It was a little top heavy with like 900 turnovers just against the Bengals, but Isaiah Rodgers and James Pierre, who I like Pierre, like that was a good buy low, but like they're not, one of the better established 1-2 duos.
Yeah, I think they feel a bit like the cornerback, the defensive version of what we just talked about on the offensive line. Like I think Flores is going to hide, if not sort of create corners
probably
on the
be
edge.
Fine, but
what if the best thing about Bid Citrus is his nickname?
That's possible. It doesn't hold the point as well as he should for 325.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I wanted to like him more than I did because of his nickname.
I know.
What if he's just Big Citrus?
What if Jalen Redmond's the only good defensive tackle?
Again.
Is a fair question there for the Vikings. So yeah, there's reasons for pessimism in Minnesota
Plus,
and everywhere else in the NFL.
Perpetually cursed as a team that never wins.
Plus, even if they're good, they're going to miss a field goal in crunch time.
That's what I'm saying. Gary Anderson, who never missed a kick this season. Oh, until this one.
Oh, man. Plus, you just know they're going to lose it.
Last
Last division.
Go for a touchdown before halftime with Randy Moss in the field? Nah. Go to halftime.
AFC North, Baltimore Ravens. Reasons for pessimism for the Ravens.
He's fired one of the best one of the best coaches in the NFL for the last 15 years because he had a substandard season.
What if you just haven't gotten better? Just haven't gotten better. With Jesse Minter coming in, John Harbaugh leaving, Lamar coming off of he had a strange season last year. Really high sack rate early on, had an injury. They got off to a rough start. He got it back a little bit. He was never really the same after the previous year. He put up monster numbers. Lamar's still Lamar, but he just wasn't the same last year. I would say offensive line wise, center is still a question. Tyler Linderbaum's out. They were going to try to draft somebody. Draft didn't fall that way. They got Danny Pinter maybe pegged as the starting center right now, so that's a question. You bring back John Simpson at right guard. I would say the interior of the offensive line plus Vega Ioane, even if people like him, it's still a rookie. So interior of the offensive line is a big question. Plus you have a new scheme. Might be more wide zone type of stuff. I don't know. I think there's some pieces to fit here that are some questions for Baltimore.
Yeah, it is an intriguing combination. Like they effectively lost a player in Tyler Linderbaum who feels like a perfect fit for the new system blocking scheme that's coming in, and drafted a guy who doesn't feel like a good fit for that system in Vega Ioane. So that's just a little curious. But yeah, the offensive line does look amazing on paper with a new system coming in, and we'll see how that actually meshes. There was a lot of chatter about the sort of friction that was starting to emerge between Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh. Like, what if this whole thing was like a product of that, right? And I know there was denials and everything's good, but where there's smoke, there's fire, at least on the pessimism
What if it's all
show.
Lamar's fault?
That's what I'm saying. What if Lamar Jackson ran a top 5 NFL coach out of the building and the guy they replaced him with won't be as good, and or Lamar doesn't like him either? And so Lamar's just now a problem. Multiple-time MVP, Lamar Jackson is, in fact, the thing dragging back the Ravens.
Let me add something I said about...
That's going to get us in trouble if that gets clipped.
We are on the pessimism show where we are purposely
too late now.
constructing
The clip cut off before that.
Potential problems, whether they are real or not. Something I said about the Eagles, right? When you were listing the best, well-run organizations in the NFL, you say the Eagles, you say the Ravens, like there's a few teams up there. But I mentioned the Eagles getting chipped away at, both coaching staff and front office. Well, the Ravens have obviously had that now too. So John Harbaugh's out. Yeah, you bring in Jesse Minter and his defensive prowess, but he's a first-year head coach. We've seen the front office chipped away at, though, for Baltimore. Their tentacles are around the NFL. We're also seeing slight differences in Steve Bisciotti and, the hands-off owner, having a little bit more hands-on when it comes to press conferences and making a draft pick and everything. And it's just, is the infrastructure in Baltimore getting attacked just a little bit these last couple of years? Because I'm only saying that because it coincides with, we used to list the Ravens roster and be like, wow, they're making all the right moves. Like the year that they drafted Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum, and because they got rid of Marquise Brown, like they were getting rid of players at the right time. They had great depth. They had very few holes on the roster, and now the holes, we say, okay, interior offensive line's a question, defensive tackle's a little bit of a question. We'll see what happens with Madubuike coming back. It looks like they addressed pass rush, the pass rush appropriately with Trey Hendrickson and maybe Zion Young in the second round, but it's still a bit of a question. Maybe the secondary, Chidobe Awuzie, getting a little bit older, and Marlon Humphrey getting a little bit older. There's just like a few more questions, I would say, on the roster now than there were a few years ago, this is what I'm saying about Detroit and about Philadelphia. Still very good overall, but more questions now than there were maybe 2 years ago.
I'm torn because I kind of expect Jesse Minter to come in and weave similar magic that Mike McDonald did with this roster and make players look better than or make the sum of the parts better than everything. However, if that doesn't happen, it's very similar to the defense that was out there last year getting wrecked by pretty much everybody, right? And what if they still don't, what if Trey Hendrickson is the only source of pass rush, which is the case in Cincinnati when they had a terrible defense, right? And it's like, all right, one guy's getting pressure, but nobody else is. Madubuike, we're talking, okay, he's coming back and that's all good. But he just went from maybe his career's over to, no, don't worry, he's coming back now. That's a fairly, major development that might call into question how well he'll play when he's back on the field. The cornerbacks were getting fairly well abused, and Marlon Humphrey might just not be able to play anymore as part of your top 3 corners. This might just be not a good defensive group anymore.
All right, moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals. Reasons for pessimism for the Bengals.
Well, what if Dexter Lawrence is not the player that he was at his peak?
Broken. He's just broken now.
He's on the decline already. He's 28 years old. His time at the top is over. And you just traded the 10th overall pick, which you could have spent on a legitimate impact defensive playmaker like Caleb Downs or Reuben Bain. And instead, you blew it on a guy who's a has-been.
They could have had Reuben Bain and Cassius Howell in the short arm buckets.
Oh, wow.
That would have been special.
That's not the body type buffet. That's one specific all-you-can-eat short arm stumpiness.
Even though they're different style-wise. But, yeah, I mean, if Dexter Lawrence's regression is real and you just invested in him for 3 years, that's a concern. If Shamar Stewart never really develops on the defensive line, one of the positives I've been citing is the fact that their starters are all back on the offense, including their offensive line. But, what if the offensive, like Orlando Brown's just been okay? Ted Karras has been okay. Dylan Fairchild just was okay as a rookie. Like, what if they're still not good enough up front?
They had there's a bunch of Bengals fans that think that offensive line was amazing because I think they had a really low sack rate or something. Their offensive line was not great last year.
Well, I saw our friend Mike Clay's rankings, and he has them 31st or something, and I think that's
But I think somewhere there's a statistical point out there somewhere that makes that offensive line look amazing, and there's definitely a subsect of people that think it was like a top 5 offensive line.
Well, there's people also who think the offense was better with Joe Flacco than Joe Burrow because Joe Flacco got rid of the ball. So I will say, in my reasons for pessimism, I think Burrow's outstanding. I still think there's a slight concern that when he gets replaced and Jake Browning comes in and Joe Flacco comes in, the offensive line does look better from a pass pro perspective. And I think Burrow's a much better quarterback than both of those guys overall. But I do wonder if there's like a better balance that he can find between getting rid of the ball and then the big play hunting that he does down the field. So that is a bit of a concern.
He said himself, like he's sort of articulated the reason he takes sacks, right?
Yeah, I get it, but he might be wrong.
Sure, no, but the point being, it shouldn't be controversial to suggest that therefore stresses an offensive line more than other quarterbacks. Like he's literally explained this himself. It's not like you're inventing something that doesn't exist. Like Joe Burrow has explained, this is why these things happen, and that is by definition more stressful to the offensive line.
I'm saying there's probably plays where he could protect them better and find that balance.
But it's like Aaron Rodgers at his peak when he would take more sacks with the trade-off that he would throw fewer interceptions than other quarterbacks.
Right.
It's like this is a stylistic way that he plays the game, and it is up for debate whether that is the optimal way of doing it or not.
Other reasons for concern, they're just rolling back out the same linebackers who were the worst in the NFL last year.
Yep.
They're young, and maybe they'll get better, but it's still a concern, right? So I think the front four is better this year. I don't know if the linebackers are better. Well, there's still a chance that the front four is not much better.
Right.
With Jonathan Allen's getting everybody that I cite as a positive: Dexter Lawrence, Jonathan Allen, Shamar Stewart. I cite Shamar Stewart as a positive because he's got help, right, and maybe is less focused on, but still has never rushed the passer at a high level. Jonathan Allen's getting older, and Dexter Lawrence is 2 years removed from his best play.
Yes,
so
it's the pessimism show, in which case Miles Murphy bust, Boye Mafe mid, Dexter Lawrence done with, declined, over the hill, toast, Jonathan Allen toast, Shamar Stewart bust, Cassius Howell stumpy arms can't be good. Where's your defense?
It's going to be another terrible
You added all these defensive linemen. Everyone's lauding you for it. They're all going to stink.
Now we're in the 2 teams left, and we're really in the spirit of the pessimism show now. Cleveland Browns, have at it. Reasons for pessimism for the Browns.
Factory of sadness. It's the Browns.
All right, moving on. Of course you're going to lose. You're the Browns.
I mean, your competition at quarterback is, Deshaun Watson, who was last good before COVID.
During COVID.
During COVID. So he was last good when there weren't people in the stands.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
before that, he was never even as productive when there were people in the stands.
sure, and so he peaked when there was nobody in the stands. And Shador.
Yes.
And Taylor Green.
Yeah. The reason for pessimism is we've got optimism around Deshaun Watson coming out of minicamp. That's the reason for
talking
pessimism.
up.
Yes.
That Deshaun Watson might be resuscitated. Yes. We've been talking about this as literally the worst personnel move ever been made in the history of the game, and that's the reason for optimism for this team right now.
That's a strong reason for pessimism.
It really is, yeah. That pretty much sums it up.
Jim Schwartz out as defensive coordinator. He was the architect of this great defense and four-man rush.
That's a serious thing that doesn't get talked about enough. Like they just
thing.
Not only did they ship him out, but they pissed him off to the point where he left.
Yeah.
Like they were,
no, we want
whatever
to keep you.
happened, and this is like, it might not be their fault, right? Maybe it was legitimate, Jim Schwartz just didn't handle well not getting a job that he was never likely to get in the first place. If that's the case, there's maybe not much they could have done about it. There were also kind of reports that suggested maybe they jerked him around a little bit with the way that operated. And if they were in any way responsible for the magnitude to which Jim Schwartz appears to have been butthurt by this, then they've really screwed up because they basically ran out of the building one of the few things that's gone right for them in the last couple of years. And the architect of this amazing defense has been so good, and now we have to wait and see how that's going to perform. But, that's a major thing now that, like, the architect of this defense has been so good and was very stylistically unusual. Like, it's out on its own in terms of, like, this is what we do relative to others. So it's going to be a significant shift schematically for everybody on that defense.
We think that they addressed receiver well, but it's still youth and question marks at receiver. Jerry Jeudy with a couple of rookies, Casey Concepcion and Denzel Boston.
Come on. Pessimism show. Casey Concepcion can't catch and Denzel Boston can't get open.
That's right.
And Jerry Jeudy is still Jerry Jeudy.
Drafted bus.
Right.
Bus
Your offensive
everywhere.
line, you added a bunch of bodies, but none of them are good. Right?
Go ahead.
Titus Howard doesn't have a position. Zion Johnson was cheeks last year. Luke Whippler probably isn't very good. Elton Jenkins has played every single position on the offensive line, and they may be plugging him in for the one he's worst at.
Hurt.
And then Spencer Fano's got short arms, depending on who measures them.
Deshaun Watson's your
and you described DeJuan Jones as half an offensive lineman at one point.
He's a swing tackle.
He's between half and 1.5 offensive linemen, depending on how you want to measure it.
He's 1.5 in size and half in
performance.
They should have just kept him at right tackle.
Yeah.
He'd be a good low end to average starting right tackle.
So your offensive line might be terrible, your receivers might be terrible, and your quarterbacks are Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders.
I think we nailed it.
And your defense, which has been great, may no longer be great because you ran the coach out of the building by not giving him the job. It's actually quite easy to make the Browns sound terrible.
Team 32 out of 32, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Reasons for pessimism for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
They still don't actually have a quarterback, right?
You're just waiting for 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers, who has not played well in 5 years.
You are sitting by the phone waiting for Aaron Rodgers to pick it up and call you. That's almost worse than being excited by a couple of good dropbacks from Deshaun Watson in minicamps.
So that would be the reason for pessimism. You get rid of the consistency of Mike Tomlin, you replace him with the consistency of Mike McCarthy.
And also, it's unclear that if and when Aaron Rodgers picks up the phone, calls you and says, hey, great news, guys, I'm back, that's even a good thing.
The real reason for pessimism is you might pair him with Mike McCarthy, who they already
hated when they last worked together. They hated each other.
It's like, hey, kids, I know your parents got a divorce, but
right.
We're getting back together.
Good news. 3 years' time, we're going to get the band back together and give it another go-round. Oh, yeah. Sweet.
The other reason for pessimism is the Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy. Like, Mike McCarthy took heat because the offense looked stale in 2017 and 18. It looked stale. And now that we have a decade of evidence after that, it may not have been McCarthy because all of the Rodgers offenses have morphed into what Rodgers likes to do. It may have been more him than McCarthy.
But McCarthy.
But here we are a decade later, and we're like, let's do it again.
I mean, I think it was probably both. But McCarthy was the first guy that basically enabled that, right?
Yeah.
Like he got into the rut of just letting Aaron do what Aaron wants to do. That didn't go well. LaFleur came in, butted heads with Rodgers. There was some friction to begin with, and then eventually Rodgers back-to-back MVPs. Like, he got the best out of Rodgers again. But McCarthy was the first guy that skewed in the direction of just enabling whatever Aaron wants to do. And, I mean, you take that to extremes and you end up with, what's his face, the terrible Denver coach.
Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, Nathaniel. Yeah, that's the extreme version. It's like, whatever Aaron wants, write down. I'm just here for the memes in the meeting, right? But whatever Aaron wants, Aaron gets. That's the extreme version of that, but Mike McCarthy was the guy that started that.
So, yeah, there's some clear pessimism for the Steelers. The defense underachieved last year. They're still talented, but they underachieved. No way they're going to get back on track with pessimism. Tackle still a big question mark.
Joey Porter Jr., he's no Joey Porter Sr.
He's no
Asante Samuel Jr., he's no Asante Samuel Sr.
Yeah. Get their dads. They're better. Dads are better. So, yeah, the big thing is going to be quarterback, though, and then maybe the offensive line, figuring out consistency at left guard. Broderick Jones has been pretty bad at left tackle. You have Max Ahanicher coming in. He's more of a developmental tackle. Like, the line might just be okay. Mm-hmm. All right, there we go. We pessimistic enough?
Well, the last two are pretty easy. I mean, any team that's got a kind of comedy farcical quarterback situation, it's pretty easy.
Make fun of the quarterback.
Yeah.
Here we go. Nailed it. Another great 5 hours of content this week during the offseason here.
Easy.
If you want to be optimistic, that's Monday for you. If you the pessimism show, if you want to be, get all the negatives out here in mid-May, it's today, the pessimism show.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so to remind everybody, Monday, Thursday, all off-season, 9 a.m. Monday, 9 a.m. Thursday. I'm on the road right now. We pre-recorded this yesterday. And then, next I'm going to a wedding, gone for about a week here. You've got some guests.
Exciting guests lined up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to be surprise guests? Like, tune in on Monday?
Yeah, I think I like the idea of, I've listened to a podcast where they record an interview and they advertise the interview as like, a big surprise guest, and they let the name out, and then they made a balls of the recording multiple times, in fact, and so that guest never showed up, and you look stupid. So I like the approach of,
can we do a silhouette?
It's like we have a surprise guest, because if you screw it up and you have to go in a different direction,
could be anybody. Okay, so let's go mystery guest Monday.
Mystery guest.
Mystery guest Thursday.
Yeah.
It's not just a guest; it's a co-host.
Co-host, mystery, right? Surprise
we're
co-host.
like a radio show. It's
right.
like when the host leaves, somebody sits in the seat.
Like the way Ross Tucker sits in for, is it Dan Patrick?
Rich Eisen.
And Rich Eisen, yeah.
Show and everything.
So they're like who else? Ryan Leaf does that.
Ryan
so
Leaf's
like a list
fill-in
that you can
Eisen.
that you're on, like the substitute teacher,
I
right?
want to see are we good enough that Ross would be a guest host on our show for a show,
or when he's off on the beach, maybe we could guest host his show.
Yeah, we could. Maybe, we should. Home and home guest show.
Right.
I'll talk to Ross.
There's got to be like a roster, like substitute teachers, where you're like, oh man, I'm off for 2 weeks. Who can we tap into and bring him in?
Ross isn't even near Rich. Does he actually sit as Rich's?
I haven't seen him on Rich's. Ryan Leaf is usually the guy I've seen. And Siciliano sits in for Eisen sometimes.
He needs some LA people.
Yeah. Maybe that's it. It's just, are you in LA?
Like Greg Rosenthal will do it at some point. I'm sure.
Maybe that's the thing. It's a proximity thing to the chair. Like
but Ross could do it.
Whoever's within a 50-mile radius of this seat can come in.
I'd be honored if Ross would host our show. Like we go dark, early July. But he doesn't. He's at the beach.
Just let Ross take the show.
He's at the beach.
Yeah.
He's got the.
But he's also like he's miles away. If it is the proximity thing, we need to be thinking.
Renner would be the only person that could do it.
Well, you've got Renner, you've got Max and Dalton, the formerly PFF
Max
people.
and Dalton could sit in the seat.
You've got our Bengals guy. What's his name?
Paul Dehner.
His name is terrible today. Yeah, Paul Dehner. Paul Dehner could come in and co-host.
Oh yeah, he could come in. Yeah,
he's local.
True. We get Paul.
So we'd have to think of the Cincinnati beat. Who we get from the Cincinnati beat to come in from the locals.
Who's the local radio guy? Maybe he would do it. What's his name?
Ken Brew.
Ken Brew would come sit in here with us.
Ken Brew.
Chris Collinsworth could do it.
Chris Collinsworth.
Yeah, I don't know. The numbers usually tank.
He's not in Cincinnati in the offseason.
Just kidding. I'm
just on a beach or a yacht somewhere.
I'm just kidding. It's on a safari.
Got to maintain that Florida tax status. You can't be hanging around Ohio in the offseason.
It's absolutely true. All right, so guests. So let's go silhouette guests for Monday and Thursday.
Yeah.
There's a chance I might be back on Thursday, or because you've already scheduled somebody, I might just take the day off. So we'll see what happens. All right, that's it for us today. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again Monday, 9 a.m. More Check the Mic. Wall.